atomic gigantification was a sweeping Japan nation when along came a dude with an ultra attitude, a Kamen Rider who's the greatest kicker of Japan. And of all, man, life's too short now, baby, to not talk big now, baby.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to another episode of Kaiju Conversation. I'm your host, Elijah, and joining me, as always, my lovely co-host and editor.
Hello, I am Rex.
And we are back at it again, another episode in this lovely month of November. It's Godzilla month. We got a lot of stuff to cover. But before we cover anything, Rex, how have you been? I have not spoken to you in a while.
Pretty good, pretty good. It's been quite a week for both of us, I believe.
That's the way you can put it.
Yeah. Where to begin with this week? I finished up the first year of the course I'm doing on Wednesday, ending it off by submitting an essay on Planet of the Apes, and also attending a screening event of everyone in the subject's short film.
Okay, so let me make sure I understood that. So you're about to finish your first year?
I did finish my first year.
You did? Okay.
Everything's been submitted. Like, even if I hadn't submitted it, it'd be too late to submit anything now.
Gotcha. So, I mean, that must be nice. That must mean you're about to go on, a month or two break?
3, I think.
Oh,
3
nice.
or 4.
Nice.
Till it starts back up again. But
that'll be good.
Doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to be
not busy.
Less busy, because during that screening of all our short films, I ended up getting attached to another short film.
Oh, really?
Yeah, me and a few other people in my group got attached to this other short film that we're now working on and seemingly looking to shoot in like 3 weeks, I think.
Okay.
So that'll be interesting.
Well, before we dive into that, what is the final verdict on the short film that you've been updating us every week for the past couple of weeks?
It got a good reception from the audience and the teachers too. The teachers actually liked it. I was worried, but the final, when I saw the rough cut edit, it did look better than I expected, and I was thankful. It actually a lot of the things I was worried about did work a lot better than I thought they would. And
you should send me it.
Yeah, I will in a second. There's actually 2 different versions. There's a shorter version that we submitted and that was shown at the screening that was like just under 5 minutes long. And then there's like an 8 or so minute version of it as well. 7 or 8 minute version.
Now, is that the director's cut? The producer's cut?
Yeah, that's the director's cut.
Okay.
I think both have their strong suits, honestly. I don't think there's necessarily one cut that I think is absolutely superior to the other.
Really?
But I think there's a couple. I think the editing in the director's cut, I think because we had more time, there's some, the editing is a little bit smoother because of the time limits that kind of caused some shots to be cut out that I think led to a couple jarring edits, and those are fixed in the extended cut. But at the same time, I think the tighter pacing of the 5-minute cut actually I think that tighter pacing works tonally and just for how kind of quick and crazy the story is. I think that also works to somewhat of an advantage.
Interesting. Okay.
But either way, it was a lot of fun, and it's great to see it, having come together.
Yeah, I know.
I hope that's. I hope this other project goes well.
So, okay, is there anything you can say about that one?
It's I've read parts of the script. I haven't got the full script. I was there for a meeting for like developing the shot list, but I had to leave early because of what I'm probably going to mention right after this. But it's like from what I recall, the gist of it is it's a romance story, pretty much.
Gotcha.
To put it
Okay.
simply.
So what's your role in that one?
Lighting. That's my role.
You're going to be the lighting guy.
Yeah. I believe we're working with 2 soft boxes and, if I remember right, LED lights. I think.
Okay.
I think that's what I was told. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out how to use the soft boxes though, because I don't own them and I've never worked with those before. So it'll be a new challenge.
Fair enough.
But yeah, no. Outside of that. God, yeah. Funnily enough, actually no, I'll save that for later. But the day, let's go to right after that meeting. I had to rush home and get all suited up because that same day I ended up having to attend a movie premiere of all things.
Is this the other film that you've been talking about for the past couple of weeks?
What, 100% Pure Rage?
I don't think you've ever given us the title.
I could have sworn I did. Oh, well.
I've never heard the title before.
Maybe you just have a bad memory. In fact, you usually do have a bad memory.
I feel like if anybody who's listening to this has listened to us long enough, the person who's going to have the worst memory out of the two of us is going to be you.
Brother, you don't even remember half the conversations we have.
We have a lot of conversations.
That's not a defense.
Okay, I'm sorry I don't remember 100 hours worth of dialogue. Sue me.
Oh, God. But yeah, no, anyways, that was an absolute blast, and it was, not gonna lie, kind of surreal seeing my name in the credits.
Now, for that, you were just an extra, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm a militia dude that gets killed twice.
It's always fun to get killed twice.
I agree. I get mowed down with a minigun.
See, that's the best way to go, right? Like, if you're gonna get shot in style, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like I would rather get like shot by a rocket launcher, like a Gatling gun, than just like a pistol.
And I get slashed too. That's awesome. But no, it was a lot of fun, and I genuinely hope Hudgens and everyone else who worked on the film and whom are currently, I believe, looking to submit it to film festivals at the moment. I really wish them best of luck with that, and I really, really hope they get as far with it as they possibly can. It is a film that was made on like a ridiculously small budget, a lot of which was crowdfunded, and is for such a low budget film, it is very large scale, and it actually works. It actually just works, and it's genuinely really impressive for an indie film. Yeah. God, that it feel I want to say more, but it's like, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if anyone, I don't know how it's getting released next, but if you ever see 100% Pure Rage is showing, please give it a watch. I'm so happy for them that the premiere I went to, or the preview premiere, I went to. It's not the official world premiere technically. Yeah, I'm very proud for them that it actually sold out. That was really cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's good. Now, would you say that overall the audience reception was pretty good too?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Good. Now, it's an action film, correct?
Yeah, like a dystopian action movie.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's a lot there's a lot of Fallen Angels influence. If you've ever seen that, I know you haven't, but anyone
I have no idea
has.
what we're talking about.
It's a Hong Kong crime drama, essentially, crime romance film from Wong Kar-wai. So much influence from that.
I don't watch. I haven't. The extent of kung fu films I've seen is
that's not a kung fu movie, bro.
The extent of Hong Kong cinema I've seen is Super Inframan and Mighty Peking Man.
Damn, that's sad. But a strong recommendation from me. Go check it out. Go support those incredible people. Go support independent creators. But yeah. And then after that, as soon as that finished, man, I had a day yesterday going from place to place to place. But yeah, as soon as that finished, I ended up going to a party for like a Halloween party. That was a lot of fun. Kind of crazy. Someone tried to goddamn break my finger at one point. That was something.
I don't know what kind of party you went to, but I don't think I would have wanted to go.
I mean, it was a fun party. Someone was just having a day, you could say.
I don't know what that means, but if some dude's trying to break my finger, they're not gonna live to see the next day.
Yeah, but you don't know the full context, so it's fine.
This is true. For all I know, I could have killed him before he did the whole breaking the finger attempt. I'm not that crazy. I'm just being overdramatic.
I think you are crazy, but anyways.
You and about 8 billion other people.
Fair enough. That's the gist of what I will mention for now. But how about yourself?
Oh boy. I'm not at liberty to really say what's going on. I have had the best way to describe this week is a roller coaster. I have not been able to do anything but talk my head off and stay at home. I that's about as much as I can really say in general. There's been some stuff going on in my life, both good and bad, sad and happy, upsetting, concerning, stressful, anxious, thrilling, literally from today, as of this recording, to 7 days ago exactly. It is wild is an understatement. Wild is very much an understatement for just exactly how crazy it has been. To talk about some stuff that I've done, obviously, I've been working at my job, and then I've cleaned. I have a desk at my home now. If I really wanted to, I wouldn't have to come to my studio. It's actually really tempting. I am thinking about finally biting the bullet, buying a second set of equipment and setting up at home so I can have that second place. So instead of driving every week, that actually would end up saving me. That's an hour of driving each week at least, unless if I have a live stream or something, or if I have another thing I'm doing that I require my office for, that's an hour drive time every time. So that would end up saving me time there. And then also it would just make it a little more convenient. Like if I need to go record some lines, some dialogue, I can just do it at home instead of having to drive to the studio, do the recording, and then drive back. So maybe after the new year and I have some extra funds, I might go ahead and get another microphone, another mic arm, another light, and another webcam setup, and go through with that. It's really, honestly, I love having a desk. I've now spent I've had to go in there and work at the desk twice. It's been really nice. And that might be the best thing that happened that I can talk about this week. Outside of that, my car broke down. I had a pulley from the pulley system fall out of my vehicle while driving, so I had to replace that. Not very fun. Not very fun at all. Been working on Sharkdemic little by little. Primarily the audio commentary track. It's coming along great. I'm excited for everybody to hear that. Halloween happened. I did continue my Halloween tradition of watching John Carpenter's The Fog. It's not Kaiju Tokusatsu, so I can talk about it here. I've been hanging out with some friends. I had a friend he had his birthday, so we went to the mall. We did some shopping. Found a couple of Godzilla things. I bought those, but I bought cologne and clothing mostly. Spent way too much money on cologne. Way too much money. Way too much money.
How much?
How much is a semi-new phone?
Oh no. I don't know. Probably like 1,000. If I had to guess.
About half of that.
Oh, 500?
On 3 bottles of cologne.
Look, that's bad, but I was honestly expecting worse.
Really?
Yeah, it's you. You spend a lot.
I do. I've been saving up money, though. This was just kind of a situational splurge, if you will.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So I did that, and now I have some nice new colognes. I think I have probably close to 40 different colognes now. So I don't buy colognes that often. When I do, it is what it is. So I did that, Halloween, like I said, watched The Fog. I actually watched Markiplier has that TV series, Edge of Sleep. A friend of mine who also really likes Markiplier, I was like, hey, Halloween, it's kind of horror-esque. You want to watch it? So we ended up watching it.
Nice.
And it's not stellar. The only reason that people like it is because of Markiplier. And I'm being dead serious. That's like the best thing about the show. So, all of that happened. All that went down. Nothing too crazy, right? But I do have one exciting thing that I wanted to share, and that's I am a co-director and co-actor of an award-winning short film.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. I worked with Grattan and Matt, Giant Monster BS, those guys, their production crew. He's passed. Co-produced with another company called Lemons for Friends. We worked on a short film called Dissectoid. It was a part of the Film Fright short film contest, which was like we had 10 days to make a short film.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to do a segment. My segment I titled Rust. And I feel like I've talked about this.
Yes,
I definitely have. Yeah, so that segment, along with the entirety of the short film, won the Best Short Film Awards according to the judges, to the public, and to the fellow filmmakers. So we swept the Best Short Film Awards. And then we also won various other ones like cinematography and Best Scare and Best Death and whatnot. So we had a really good turnout.
Nice.
It's really nice. There's a director's cut that has a couple more seconds of Rust in it, I believe. And then there's the one that was shown at the film festival. I don't know what the plan is for that distribution. I do know that if it is public, it will be available through a hyperlink on kaijuconversation.com under the appearances tab. I will put that in there if it ever does go live publicly.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, no, that was really exciting. That this is my technical first major win. I've won a couple of other things in terms of short films, but nothing too crazy. Just enough where I can say that I'm award-winning, filmmaker and actor. I've won more awards for acting than I have for directing, but with this, it is officially official. Like you can't question it. It's true. It's legit. And so I'm thrilled. I'm genuinely thrilled. I found out on Halloween. Halloween ended up being a really good day, all things considered. So yeah, I'm really happy with how Halloween turned out as a day. You know, being an award-winning filmmaker isn't something that happens every single day. And yeah, so everything, despite the fact that I have felt all the emotions this week, to say the least, I've had a pretty good past couple of days.
Nice, that's good.
Nothing crazy, I haven't went to a film premiere. I haven't gone to the movies or anything, but I've had my fair share of nice things happen.
Well, speaking of nice things, have you seen any Tokusatsu?
No.
I figured.
I watched John Carpenter's The Fog, and
That's
I watched
Toku.
Edge of Sleep, and that's all I've been able to watch. I've been in a state of mind where I'm not able to watch a lot, but I've also been working a lot. So between my state of mind and how much I've been working, because I had to fix my car, I had to clean the house, on top of all my other work. So when I did have time, I've also been sleeping. I've been tired. I've been really tired.
I don't believe you when you say you sleep.
It's funny you say that because not many people do.
Yeah, I understand why.
But it is funny because I did watch a show that was all about not sleeping.
That's ironic.
It felt like I was being personally
attacked?
Targeted, yes.
Maybe it was.
Maybe it will be.
Yeah, Markiplier will just start calling you out directly.
I wouldn't be surprised. Well, have you watched any Tokusatsu this week?
Yes, actually. But it's all been from one little franchise, you could say.
What does that mean?
Well, it's November. What do you think?
Ultraman?
Nah, that guy's July. And I have hardly watched any Ultraman for a while.
Well, do better.
Maybe someday. Mr.
Now.
80.
Look, Ultraman 80...
No excuses, I don't care.
Hey, I'm farther along Ultraman 80 than you are with Tiga.
I wasn't asking. Yeah, because I was waiting for you for Tiga.
Okay, then maybe you should come back and help me with 80. If I ever have time in my life again. See, if we watch one episode a day, I could 100% be done with 80 by...
Yeah, but can you watch one episode a day?
I don't know.
Exactly. Anyways, so yeah, outside of watching, the movie of today's episode, the day after that, so the day after I finished like all my assignments and all that, just in the most perfect of timing, I gotta say, came a Godzilla -1 re-release.
That's right. That is something that's going on right now.
So I finally got to see Godzilla minus color on Halloween night. And surprise, surprise, it's actually a new version of minus color.
Really?
Yeah, it's an international version of minus color.
So so does that mean that it doesn't have the Japanese text under the English language? It has English text on the like captions for like the time and location?
Yes. So the differences are that, but it's still got the Japanese title card at the end, like the G -1.0.
Really?
Yeah, it's still got that at the end.
Did it have the Shinzo
It did have the Shuji Abe.
Okay.
It did have that. I mean, they've like any release going forward has that, I think.
Yeah.
But what it didn't have actually was the old Toho logo.
Really?
Yeah, no, what they did instead was, I think in the American release and what's on Netflix is they've got the the modern Toho logo, but that's in color.
Yes.
And then it's the black and white 4x3 Toho logo. In this case, it was the Sugoi Ko logo, which is the Australian distributor. That was in black and white. You had the modern Toho logo in black and white, and then it just went into the movie.
Oh, did it also have the English title cards for like the 70th anniversary Godzilla production?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I just remember that's the last other. The fact that I can tell you the exact differences between the international versions and the Japanese versions.
Bro, the fact that I knew the differences going in and noticed it.
Yeah, it's really funky. That's what happened with me with Minus Color. When I saw Minus Color in theaters, I was like, oh, wait, that's different, that's different, that's different, that's different. Oh.
I hadn't even seen Minus Color before outside of like the first 5 minutes or so.
So this was your first time watching Minus Color in full?
Yeah.
So what did you think?
I actually enjoyed it. I will say I still think the movie works better in color, but in an actual like theater setup, it does look pretty good. I won't lie. The grading is really solid. It really actually brings a lot of attention to how solid the lighting is overall in the film.
Yes.
Like I was really like paying attention to that. And also low key, it kind of makes some of the CGI look better in black and white.
Yeah, because
some of the flaws in it are less obvious, particularly when like Godzilla arrives in Ginza at the beginning of the sequence, where you've got like the CGI people filling in.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of glossiness and how sort of unpolished some of those models are, or some of the textures on them are, is far less obvious in the black and white, I think. Which makes sense.
I'm gonna have to look back at that and see, because I don't remember that, but I do know that in like if you watch -1, not Minus Color, -1, and you like really focus in, you can see some of those like weird like subtle issues with the CG.
Right.
But that's also because you're literally looking for them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because the water does that too. If you look close enough, the water does look funky.
I don't know. I've never had issues with the water in -1.
I'm
generally the best looking thing in the movie. Honestly.
You have to stare at it and look at how it's moving. There's like a subtle, like non-naturalistic.
Sure, but that's
motion.
probably. I feel like that's the same with like CG water in most movies.
Yeah, but no. My point is, you have to stare at it to see it. It's still good. Like I'd say the CG models of the people are good because of how they're utilized. But if you stare at them, you're going to see that it's not perfect.
Yeah, no, it was overall like not a bad experience. I did genuinely enjoy it. So, now I've seen the film in theaters 10 times. Finally rounded that number off.
Congratulations.
And I'll say, as I said already, the film works better in color, but I will admit, there are like maybe 2 shots that are perhaps even a bit more striking in black and white. I will concede.
I'll take that. Now, one thing I will say that I think the Minus Color version has over the color one, and this is the one thing, is the fact that they have yet to replace the end title card with the English version of the title. I love the -1.0 over the -1 written out.
I'm going to be honest, that change means absolutely nothing to me.
Right, but I'm saying like that's the one thing I think that the black and white version, in my opinion, does better than the color version. And it's just the fact that they're too lazy to go back in and like redo that animation in the black and white style for the -1 title card.
With
it written out. So like I that's my one thing. Obviously I've seen minus color 9 times. I've seen -1 21 times. So for me, it's like, yeah, it works. You know, it works. I think both ways, but I love -1 in color. I think color is the way to go. But minus color, it's not a bad version by any means.
Yeah. And then outside of that, today, because they didn't just re-release minus color and -1, they also Segoiko also released the 4K of Godzilla 1954. So I ended up seeing that earlier today with a friend of mine who quite loved it. And yeah, I had a really good time with it. They actually played the right before the movie begun. They actually played the 70th anniversary logo, which was kind of neat. So I got to see that on the big screen too.
Oh, sweet! The Marvel Studios
the type one, yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't think I need to explain 54 and how that's a very good movie, but it's a very good movie. And yeah, it was interesting to see the 4K and see. I remember the Criterion version, like the Criterion Blu-ray, still having a lot of the scratches because obviously 54's material isn't exactly in the best of conditions.
Right.
And it is definitely interesting to see that a lot of those scratches that were there are actually gone as well.
Now, that was, I think they went in and like digitally did that.
I believe so, yeah, because it is a digital remaster.
I know that the Criterion 4K, or it's like denoise, like they denoised it or something.
Yeah, there is some denoising there. It's not as bad as I thought it was, thankfully, I heard it could be. Like, it's not like completely terrible, but it is a little noticeable, I think.
I still need to get it to watch it, but
either way, it's still very, very nice to see 54 on the big screen.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. The 4K remaster, is it like a whole nother experience?
I wouldn't say so, really. I wouldn't say it's like seeing the movie in a whole like new thing. I mean, the thing with 54 is I like every time I watch it, I think I do find it always feels a little different because there's just shots in it that I just genuinely do not remember in the movie at all. And then when I'm watching it, it's also like I'll kind of will find a little something new to appreciate. I was really appreciating the lighting in 54.
Okay, your new thing, you know how it used to be with Ring and whatnot? Your new thing is, I really appreciate the lighting. Oh, the lighting. Look at
this is
lighting.
Probably for the best if I'm being a lighting guy on an upcoming short film, that I'm starting to pay more attention to the lighting in like 54 and -1, you know?
Well, here's the thing about black and white film is you had like lighting was such an art.
Oh, 100%. What I like about 54's lighting in particularly the scenes with Godzilla and or like the military in like those, like the rampages, for example, is how a lot of that, it's usually only like one, like a key light and maybe a very like slight fill. Very slight fill. So it is really dark, really dramatic, very, very high contrast, and usually the city is like lit up by like the tanks firing or like Godzilla's breath, you know?
Yeah,
and it looks fantastic in that
regard. It does. No, it really does. And I think one thing I love about Japanese cinema is their dramatic lighting.
Yeah,
you know, because it is a little dramatic, right? But it's stylistically beautiful.
Yeah,
that's something I don't remember if I've talked about it, but I bought a spotlight. I have a very nice, powerful spotlight with a barn door setup.
Yeah,
and I have gel.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't wait to use that I cannot wait for the moment where I can have like all the lights go out and then I have this spotlight that just like hits this one point, and that's, that's stuff I love.
Mm-hmm.
And that I attribute that to my love of Japanese cinema. We just had a whole month where we covered the yokai films.
Yeah.
And in the yokai stuff, that happens very frequently.
Oh, yeah. I remember the second one, if I remember right, had some really striking lighting in scenes.
I remember the first one during the...
First one did too, I remember.
The Hyaku Monogatari...
I think the second one stood out even more.
I mean, the second one visually stood out for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they're both really good. And that's something that, I think... I mean, lighting's very important, especially in a time where, like, people don't understand.
The Deadpools and Wolverines of the world.
I was thinking the Russo brothers of the world, but that's
Same
a good...
difference.
Yeah. No, because, I mean, here's the thing. Digital lighting is becoming way too common.
Yeah.
Because, ISO, so in a camera setting, ISO is becoming more commonly used. And digital lighting that you can generate through editing is also becoming more common. And doing stuff like that is creating very flat imagery. It used to be, prior to digital cameras, it did used to be your shutter speed, your lens angle, whatever you want to call that, and that's how you created your lighting on top of whatever lights you had. Right now, that's not the case. There's a lot more digital. There's all that, and so to me, it's very important that when you are doing film, lighting has to take precedence over most things.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to. You have to.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a very, very important visual element to the medium that can really elevate a lot of scenes.
Mm-hmm. Lighting is everything. That can change a tone, that can change a mood, that can change everything.
It changes an entire experience.
Mm-hmm.
Same with color grading. Color grading can do the same as well.
Oh, I love color grading.
I wish I knew more on that. I genuinely wish I had more knowledge on grading.
That's been something I have been slowly learning more and more of, is like, on your first layer, you do the color correction. You turn white to true white. And then you create your layers with your adjustments and your tones and your tints, your contrast, your whites, your blacks, your, highlights, your grayscales, stuff like that. So much. There's so much to it.
Yeah. And again, that's a whole nother thing where that's an art form in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why colorists are like their own, like a separate job in the industry.
Right. I mean, there are, like, if you read through like Marvel movies, there's like a whole segment to like the actual like development, the color development. I think it's a Disney company. I don't remember the title, but there is like companies that their whole thing is just color correction.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And we've actually covered color film in Japanese cinema as well in that whole process, because that was a whole different process back when it first became popular, because then you also, nowadays it's a little different because it's all digital data, right? But it used to be, what kind of film stock are you using? Sometimes they had to film it in a way to replicate it. There's so many things about coloring that goes into filmmaking.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Surprise, 54 is a good movie, but fortunately enough for me, that's not even the end of my Godzilla cinema journey. As another cinema that's ironically like down the street from where I saw 54 is having a little week of Godzilla movies there. So tomorrow I will probably be seeing Godzilla Raids Again or Mothra versus Godzilla, one or the other, or both. Depends how I feel.
Both is good. I like both.
No, you don't like both. They're like some of the lowest movies on your ranking.
They are. That'd be like
that
the
sounds like
most,
a Hell on Earth day for you.
That would be
Especially
the
when
most
the cinema's
boring.
showing the Mechagodzilla duology as well.
Oh no.
I don't know if I'll have time to see the Mechagodzilla duology. I'm gonna.
Oh come on, you have to.
I do want to find a way, but I don't know how I'm gonna fit it in because it.
Like, would you rather not listen to both Sato and Ifukube's like some of their greatest compositions for Godzilla?
Bro, if it was lasting like even a day or two longer, even a day longer, then I would 100% say, yeah, of course I'm seeing both of them, like 100%. If it was a day
What's
longer.
holding you back?
The fact I have work.
Call in.
I already did because of the screening.
Do it again.
No.
I've called in for worse reasons. I really hope nobody from my job ever listens to this podcast. I've admitted to calling in for like the dumbest reasons.
It's fine. It's fine. But yeah, no, either way, I'll be seeing at least 2 more Godzilla movies there.
Well, that's exciting. Yeah, I was really hoping they were going to show something that wasn't -1 this year. I was really hoping for like Final Wars, which didn't happen. But I mean, at this rate,
You
the
already
only
saw
thing,
it, so shut up.
right? The only thing I'm missing now from the Millennium era is Mega Gears and GMK, and I think I've seen most of the Showa era.
I was legitimately disappointed that their selection of movies was like just Showa movies and Shin Godzilla for what this one theater's playing. I was a little disappointed there's no like Heisei or Millennium, like not even one.
I'm genuinely surprised that there isn't like, because correct me if I'm wrong, but the Heisei stuff is unavailable in Australia currently.
Pretty much. I mean, the thing is, I don't think this cinema actually has like it's like using an official distributor to show these Godzilla movies, you know?
Well, I mean, my point that I'm going to make is still going to make sense. I do think it's really weird that, like, in Australia, like, there isn't an easier way to see these films because, I mean, let's be real here. Godzilla's grown to be so popular. You guys aren't even out of the DVD era for any of them outside of Shin and -1, right?
Yeah, -1 Blu-ray coming out, including the collector's edition, so I basically scammed myself anyways. And it has English subs for the bonus features, so yeah, scammed myself.
Damn. See, it baffles me. Like, I would imagine that somebody would have already jumped on those licenses because, I mean, we're in a time period where I think Godzilla would be desirable to license out.
I mean, I suspect 54 4K could possibly get a physical release here soon, given it's the same company put out -1 that has it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a possibility. But outside of that, I did also watch one more Godzilla movie, not in cinemas, sadly, but I did see one more Godzilla movie because today I think, you know, since it's November, we're kind of covering a Godzilla movie.
Are we?
Yeah. We did last week.
That's right. We covered Godzilla versus Gigan.
Yeah.
So that would mean, so if we've covered Godzilla versus Gigan, then we probably would be covering, let's see, so it's the 70th anniversary. So what's the next? So maybe it's an anniversary film. Are we covering Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla?
No, stupid, before that.
84?
Did you not hear the words I said? I said before.
Okay, are you referring to the 93 film or the 74 film?
Before both.
Well, it can't be Ghidorah or Mothra because we've already covered those. Same with 54. Is it Hedorah? We literally just covered that earlier this year.
God, so stupid. Have you ever heard of a guy named Megalon and Jet to Jaguar?
Have you ever heard of Seatopia?
I have, actually.
Nice. What if I
watched
told
a
you?
movie about Seatopians.
Really?
Yeah.
So you watched a movie where people saw their toes getting peed on?
Naturally, yes. It's my favorite Miike movie.
What? There's no way that that's a real movie.
No, but I did see a clip from a Miike movie earlier today that is quite interesting, if I put it that way.
What movie?
Fudo.
Oh, I have Fudo.
Have you seen it?
No, I literally just got it in the mail this week. I have
That's
4K.
funny. It was a very interesting clip, I'll say that.
I need to watch it.
Yeah, it was quite Miike.
Well, speaking of being on brand, the Godzilla fandom has a stigma that Godzilla is a fun, funky, kooky franchise where he does outrageous things, and it doesn't have a very meaningful metaphorical statement. Some people talk highly of films such as Godzilla vs. Kong or Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. Godzilla vs. Gigan we talked about in a similar context.
Sure.
But I would argue there's a film that eclipses all of those films in terms of this repertoire of the franchise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you know its title?
Gojira Tai Meguro.
Or Godzilla vs. Megalon.
Released March 17th, 1973 during the 1973 Toho Champion Festival Spring Edition, alongside Jump Out Youth, Panda and Little Panda, The Rainy Circus, and Jungle Black Bear Episode 2.
Hey, yes, that is all correct.
So, okay, I guess we should start off where we let off. We should start where we left off, right?
Sure.
So, Godzilla vs. Gigan did pretty well, as we established.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of where they wanted to take the franchise, right? Godzilla vs. Hedorah did not do as well, and Tanaka did not like that approach, so they tried to course correct it. And Gigan seemingly did that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is also where the series obviously started going in more and more of that direction of using stock footage as well.
Right, that was something that, I mean, in all fairness, like, that started back in Invasion
65.
of Astro Monster.
Right. But Gigan, I think, is where it becomes its most pervasive.
Right, yeah, because, I mean, they were using footage from literally the film prior. They were using footage from Hedorah.
They were using footage from everything.
Yeah, but my point is, like, they were even using the one that most recently came out, so, like, everybody would have been like, oh, I know that shot. I know that.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that in here? And furthermore, outside of the stock footage, we have established the death of the Japanese film industry. We don't need to do that again.
Mm-hmm.
And we've also established in last episode, if you haven't listened to the Godzilla vs. Gigan episode,
This is part 2. Listen to it.
This is part 2, because I also brought up the sports boom of the late 60s that kind of replaced the kaiju boom from manga, and knowing that was a boom of popularity, this film also makes a little bit more sense with their character, with the Jet Jaguar character. And then on top of that, establishing the second monster boom with Henshin heroes and whatnot also furthermore establishes the context for literally why the film is the way it is.
Yeah, for why the film was just straight up ripping off scene. This movie in general just kind of takes a fair bit from a lot of the cultural zeitgeist at the time in Japan, because even bear in mind a fair bit of it was cut. Like, for example, there's an infamous behind the scenes photo of Godzilla with a telephone pole in his mouth, like a toothpick, whilst holding a large tree as a sword, which is like a reference to the toothpick is a reference to to Monjiro, which at the time is like a hero who at the time was in a show that was airing at the time between 72 and 73. And then like the sword is meant to be, apparently it's a reference to Zatoichi specifically with his sword.
Wait, really?
Apparently, yeah, that's what I read.
Interesting, because by this point, Zatoichi was about over.
I mean, wasn't the TV show going on at this time? Or
That's
just
right,
about
it was. Yeah, that probably would have been what was going on at this time.
Yeah. So you've got those samurai influences. You've got, obviously, the Ultraman influence. There's a scene that's in this movie that is ripped straight out of Kamen Rider vs. Shocker. And, yeah. So you've got a lot of that sort of cultural media landscape really influencing this film. Much in the same way that, like, the Shay dance appears in Astro Monster, for example.
Yeah. And to be honest, I would say that the Godzilla vs. Megalon is probably the 1970s equivalent to Astro Monster, just in terms of how influenced it was by the time period it came out in. You do see, like, is very, like, you see that sprinkled throughout Hedera and a lot in Gigan, but I think Megalon is the culmination. I mean, this was right before, like, everything started to kind of teeter off again, right? Because by 1976, everything was over, oddly enough. I don't think Kamen Rider or Sentai was.
Mm-hmm.
I know Toei was still
going.
But, like, you
Sentai
know...
would have just started around, like, 75?
I think
that was when Go Ranger started.
That sounds right, yeah, because Spider-Man, the Super Sentai didn't start until after Spider-Man, which was 78.
Oh, damn.
And Battle Fever J was 77. So, yeah, Super Sentai didn't start yet.
75, April 75 for Go Ranger.
So, bear in mind, so by 1973, you're looking at Kamen Rider V3, correct? Kamen Rider V3 is what?
Yeah. I mean, early 73, you had the first Kamen Rider wrapping up still, actually.
Gotcha. So, yeah, I mean, Kamen Rider was a big thing. By 73, you had already had Jack, Ace, and I think Taro wasn't started yet. It was Jack and Ace. And, of course, like, Kikaida was already out by this point. And so you do have a good selection of kaiju, you know, and henshin heroes. But I think a film that more importantly kind of helped this was Daigoro versus Goliath, which was the 10th anniversary Tsuburaya Productions film.
Mm-hmm.
Which, even though they're not directly linked, they definitely have blood together. And a lot of that comes back to the script treatment. Godzilla Red Moon, Erebus, Halfon, No Man's Land of the Monsters, which was a story treatment that reportedly started in 1970, but might have been 1973, kind of that time period, where two writers, which were by the name of Kazuo Mitsuda and Tetsuo Kinjo, worked on developing a story that the basic synopsis is a male space monster mates with a female earth monster. Unfortunately, the offspring of these two is killed, and then they go on a rampage through Okinawa.
I feel like that's kind of underselling it a bit, but yeah, that's kind of the gist, I suppose.
The film follows. If you want to dive into it a little bit more, I'd love for you to kind of jump in here on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an inaccurate like summary. Like essentially, yeah, it is sort of this tale of like these two monsters are discovered, but that your description kind of misses that this Red Moon kind of has this very ironic sense of humor to it. About like this human ego and almost like greed of science, where like all the strategies that they come up with to try and defeat the monsters are just these horrible strategies that kind of end up making situations worse. Like they figure out that Red Moon doesn't like the smog. So what they try and do is they try and pollute Tokyo to kill Red Moon, but then it doesn't work. And it just makes the whole situation worse. Then they try poisoning Erebus. The American military tries using poison gas against Erebus, and then Erebus just ends up absorbing the ability.
Isn't that basically what Monster X Strikes Back does for Gilala?
Kinda similar, I guess you could say. I mean, the whole thing with like they have like there's a scene where a rocket ship crashes into an oil tanker, and they're trying to lure Red Moon to Erebus, which there's just this line in the story where it's like, what a terrible thing to happen during an oil shortage. And then it ends up waking up Godzilla, who really isn't in much of this story.
If I remember correctly.
Kind of similar to this film where he really only comes in near the end.
Right.
And then, that whole ironic sense of humor extends to the end of this, to the whole mating thing, because the whole reason the two monsters are brought together is because they want a monster battle to try and defeat, so that they'll defeat each other, and kind of similar to King Kong vs. Godzilla in a sense, a magazine company is trying to use it as a publicity stunt as well. But then it ends up having an ironic ending when the monsters just end up mating.
And see, all of that, it's very interesting because that, when you break that down, you do see that in Godzilla versus Megalon to a certain extent, right? It's not 100% like a perfect translation, but you can see some of those ideas bled through, right?
A little. I mean, definitely the whole structurally with like Godzilla's role in particular, I think is the most obvious similarity.
Right. It kind of reminds me of the script treatments for Godzilla versus Gigan, where they're completely different. They're way more overzealous, and they're like reaching for the stars, when in all reality, like that's not the way to go, right? They ended up scrapping 90% of what those scripts had. But you do see that basic blueprint still in there. And the thing about Godzilla versus Megalon is it replaced a film. We don't know what film. Probably this film.
Yeah, it's heavily speculated to be a Red Moon.
But it replaced a film that had to be canceled last minute. And when you look at, like, Red Moon would require 4 new suits to be produced, which, I mean, we get that either way. But they would have designs, like there would be a lot more going into it than another thing at the time. Okinawa, which is where the film would primarily take place, Okinawa was not under Japanese jurisdiction.
No, I think it was just given over while they were writing Red Moon. I think it was just given over.
I think it would depend on where technically the writing began, because there are conflicting reports.
If I remember right, the interview with Matsuda suggests that it was like had just been handed over, and that was kind of why they took it, or why they were going with that idea. But he didn't even, or Mitsuda, sorry, but he didn't actually think they would end up filming in Okinawa anyways.
Yeah, I think I read that like they were going to probably film a little bit in Okinawa, but primarily it would have been done in Tokyo. Yeah. And so it's really interesting because the script and the whole story treatment is a really like grandiose like adventure that's very much like a 60s film. But I mean, the unfortunate truth of it is, so was the Gigan story treatments. And at this point in the life of Toho, you couldn't really do that.
Yeah.
That was over. And so what we ended up getting is a I guarantee you the way it happened is they looked at the script, they liked it, they went on with it before they could actually start production. They like did the numbers and they're like, wait a minute, we can't finance this. We can't
maybe,
make
but
this
bear
happen.
in mind also Subaraya Productions was meant to be attached to Red Moon. I mean, all the like staff listed or that was intended to be working on the film was Subaraya staff.
That's right. It could have also been a falling out between the two of them.
I mean, Subaraya was a subsidiary of Toho at this time.
Oh, that's right. It was. Yeah, because Toho worked on the later Ultraman.
Yeah, and they directly owned the company.
I mean, it could be a plethora of things. It could be budgetary. It could be issues agreeing on how exactly they're going to do it or whatever. But needless to say, the film did get canned, and it got canned last minute before they had to produce something for the Spring Champion Matsuri Festival. And so that's where the story of Megalon pretty much begins. And I think it's important to note that this is the first Toho Godzilla film to not be produced by Toho specifically. It was produced by a subsidiary, Toho Izo, which was the art department. It's split off from the main company because Toho was starting to compartmentalize its studio to keep going, and Tomiyuki Tanaka was the one that took and made Toho Izo, and so with that he also took the special effects department. Now, Godzilla vs. Gigan does have a co-production with Izo, but that was for the art. That was the art department side. Godzilla vs. Megalon was the first film produced by Toho Izo, which is why that budget went from being where it was to even less, right? Mm-hmm. There are a plethora of things that went on for the development of Megalon that make you question how it even existed. The overall development time period between concept to completion was 6 months, from what I can find.
Yeah. And filming itself was only like a matter of weeks in January, around like late December to January.
Yeah, I saw something along the lines of 30 days, December of 72 into early January of 73.
Yeah, that would make sense because a lot of sources say it films in January, but there's a set photo that is dated to December that I saw. So,
and then effects were done in a week as well.
Jesus, wow.
There were two sets constructed, Goro's lab and then the Seatopians HQ, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess that's how you would call it.
Yeah.
But for the film, like as we established, 6 months. So 30 days of that was filming. So,
but also the most of the time before filming was just like trying to develop a story for it. Which, bear in mind, like they tapped Shinichi Sekizawa, but the most he was able to give them was a general story beats, which then had to be which Jun Fukuda would end up developing into a proper screenplay. And by the time like all the effects crew and whatnot, production crew were actually able to start preparing things, they just did not have they really didn't have the time they needed for this. So it was completely rushed, a lot of this.
Yeah, it went through 3 scripts from what I understand before they came up with the final one. The first one, Godzilla vs. Megalon, the Undersea Kingdom Annihilation Mission.
I mean, the thing with all these 3 is I don't think they were even complete scripts. I'm pretty sure they were all just the general story from Sekizawa.
I think Undersea Kingdom was that, or the first one was the Sekizawa one, because then Fukuda did 2 drafts.
Okay. Right.
Fukuda did 2 drafts of Insect Monster Megalon versus Godzilla, the Undersea Kingdom Annihilation Mission. There were 2 drafts of that one. that was the one Fukuda worked on.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then there's another one, something along the lines of Megalon Brothers versus Godzilla. I don't know where that title comes from, but that's another title that I saw thrown around. And from my understanding, Teruyoshi Nakano and Shinichi Sekizawa, again, just like for Godzilla vs. Gigan, they sat down and they worked out all the effect stuff. They figured out how the effect stuff would work. So I imagine that Sekizawa didn't just give them the story elements and then leave. I'm sure he still was involved in some way, shape, or form throughout production, but probably not nearly as much as he previously was.
Well, yeah, absolutely not as much as he previously was. But yeah, no. Outside of that, is there anything else too major that you think we should mention before getting into the film?
I mean, do we want to establish what kind of really started everything with a certain character?
Oh, right. Yes. How could I forget that? How could I forget to mention Mr. Red Alone, as he was once known?
So, obviously, Jet Jaguar is definitely inspired by Henshin Heroes.
Of course.
And so Toho put on a contest with a local TV station and I think like a pharmaceuticals company.
Yeah. The company was Seiyu. This was actually, Super Riot was involved in this as well, this competition.
And the idea was Japanese children could submit monster designs for a character to appear in the next Toho monster movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's where Red Aron or Red Arrow came from. It won. They created the suit for it. It did a couple of promotional events. It's not even remotely close to apparently the original drawing.
Right. It doesn't even have the color scheme because I think the original design was, from what I read, was all white pretty much. Well, mostly white?
I'm not sure about that one.
Of what I read, it was only white.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so you had Red Aron with wings. The head still kind of looks like Jet Jaguar, like the eyeball specifically. It looks really funky. It reminds me of something from like one of the more obscure Toei Tokusatsu shows of the 70s.
Kinda, but perhaps even more funky than them, I'd argue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. And so some people hypothesize it's to avoid copyright infringement, but I really don't think that that's the answer, because I think anytime stuff like this does occur, there are like clear waivers of like entering this contest revokes your rights for your story, for your script, for your concept.
Yeah. Bro, some of those that people sign for like competitions like that are actually insane. There was one for like the movie Annabelle Creation that is just absolute madness. If you actually read it. It was like they take like basically every single right involving like your short film, pretty much. It was like a short film competition for that movie, and they take basically every single right away from you.
That doesn't surprise me. I know for the Godzilla Day stuff, Toho had like a whole thing for like, because they said we want to hear the fans' responses to why Godzilla means so much to you. And if you actually read like the rules and conditions, it's like it has to be, a certain file format. It has to be a certain quality. You can't wear anything that has a brand on it. You can't refer to Godzilla as he or she. It has to be they, them. And like, there's a whole list of things, which is funny because then when you watch the actual like official one they did of people that worked at Toho, one guy definitely says he was always my favorite growing up. And it's like, oh, so you're not even following your own rules and conditions. That's good to see, Toho. Thank you. Thank you very much. But no, that stuff's really crazy. But that is because, so as an example, if they don't have those, it could become a thing similar to that of like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, where the characters, or Terminator is a great example too, where the characters then go into this copyright limbo because, certain ideas belong with certain people and certain stuff belongs to certain companies, and it becomes very convoluted. It's difficult to make that stuff happen once you don't have those contracts in place. So while it is, it is crazy that like that stuff is a required thing to make this stuff happen, it is definitely a necessary evil,
To a degree, maybe. I wouldn't 100% say that it's always necessary. Like sometimes conditions go a little too far, I think.
But I think that's also onto the person who does it. Like if a company wants to make these rules and restrictions, whoever is entering has to understand that they're agreeing to that. Does that make sense?
I don't entirely agree. Not fully.
Okay, so as an example.
I get what you're saying. I just don't 100% agree with you.
As an example, let's say that I did submit a thank you video to Toho for Godzilla. Okay. So I shoot on my Blackmagic 4K quality. I don't wear a branded t-shirt. It looks very professional. I have a mic set up. I have a whole lighting set up. Like I make probably the best looking thing you could possibly make for free of charge. But I call Godzilla he throughout the entirety of the film the video, because to me, Godzilla is he, him. They don't pick it, but they still can use it. And perhaps they take that video and they cut it up and they take segments. I didn't listen and I didn't follow the rules and guidelines that are there. They are admittedly,
okay, but bear in mind what I'm referring to is like a little more extreme example of so the Annabelle creation one. Warner Brothers essentially, so the contest winner, Warner Brother would legally own the winner's idea for 3 years and be allowed to develop a feature film out of it and only be obligated to compensate the contestant with $100 and a chance to meet the director of the feature film adaptation. Or meet David F. Sandberg, the director of Annabelle Creation, sorry.
So let me ask you this. Was that clearly said in the rules and regulations?
God, I don't entirely remember.
Because my and you don't have to remember, but my whole point is, if it's very clearly stated, the winner of this contest, no matter how much you spend, no matter what you do, no matter how amazing it is, you're only going to get $100 and you get a chance to meet the director of Annabelle Creation. If they clearly said that, then it is not on Warner Brothers for only doing that.
I feel like that's still kind of that's still messed up though. Like,
is it though?
I'd argue it is, yeah.
But if if a oven says, hold on.
Getting screwed over, and you accept you're getting screwed over, does not mean you're not getting screwed over.
If a oven, ovens have those hot lights on them, right? Like surface is hot, right? The oven is on, that light is on, hot surface. If you go to touch the oven and it burns you, you can't sue the company because the light is on. You can't say, oh, the oven burned me. How dare you guys, your oven burned me. Well, there is a hot surface light for a reason. That is there. You can see that. It is up to you to touch the stovetop or not.
Okay, sure. But I feel like there's a little bit of a difference between not touching a touching a stovetop and having an idea, like a fully creative project that you've put your heart and soul into to develop as a fan, and then the company gets the rights to your ideas and can just develop a whole feature film out of it and only compensate you a measly $100 USD for this idea that more or less anyone else involved with it is going to be getting, like any actors or whatnot, are going to be getting better royalties than you, even if it's not great. And the company, if it does well, can get upwards of like hundreds of millions of dollars. So I don't think that's really comparable here.
Okay, but
like in a vacuum, sure, but as a looking at the bigger whole picture here, that's messed up.
Right, but if you're entering into this contest, you should know the rules and regulations. So
Sure.
So like if I were to do that, if Toho were to do that, then I would put in $10,000 into this idea and I win. And I only make $100 back, I can't get upset because I know that I put $10,000 into this Godzilla fan film to enter into this Toho official contest and I won. And all I get's $100 and I meet Yamazaki. And then they have the ability to adapt that. That's why you don't do stuff like that. And okay, this is where it's going to be a little like you have to, there are certain ways to get better things. That's why people hire agents. That's why people go through different means to pitch scripts and story ideas and whatnot. And you get better results that way. I'm not going to disagree with you. You're going to get better results if you go through the more convoluted and full of red tape method, right? If you get an agent, your agent finds the contact for Warner Brothers, then he finds the contact through the Warner Brothers contact to pitch scripts, then they schedule a meeting, then you have to come up with your elevator pitch and your main pitch, and then you pitch it and you wait for a response, and you have to keep bugging, and then they agree, and then you have to agree on royalties and payments and the taxes behind all that. Then you pay your agent. That's convoluted and obnoxious. Absolutely, I agree. But that is, it's the same for like any other job or any other thing that you're going to do. You can go the easy route. It's not going to be the most the outcome might not be the most successful you can get. As an example, Rex, you're going to college right now, right? You're going to college. You're paying X amount of money for your tuition to have a degree in film, right? I'm not going into college. I'm not paying tuition. I'm going and I'm working in the field itself, right? Now, when you graduate, you will have a better opportunity and chance to get hired on to a company than I will. Because I did not go through the red tape. I did not go through the paperwork. I did not go through all the finances that it takes to do film school. I don't want to do that. I'd rather just go right into it and work on it myself and build it up, right? It's the same idea. I'm working on building my own portfolio to make myself a product that people want to invest in. You're going through the method of, I'm going to school. When I graduate, I'm going to have this diploma, and that's going to be my selling point. Both ways are right. Both ways can get to the end goal. Both ways are accepted, generally speaking, especially in this field. One's going to cost $100 million or $100,000. One of them is going to cost however much you need to put into producing your own content and proving yourself to other people. That's the same concept as I'm going to go through this fan contest that this company's putting on, and I'm going to go through a talent agent, go through the correct channels, and pay the money, take the time out and do all that. Does that make sense?
Sure, but also a lot of people, I think, would agree that the costs of university in general are also just that's a whole separate issue that is also screwed up in its own way.
Right, but I'm not talking about the cost of tuition. You're still pay it doesn't matter if you got a free ride to college or not. You're still taking that time out, that 4 years or however long it takes for that diploma to get that, right? And instead of me doing that, I'm saying, screw that. I'm not going to go to school. I'm going to learn it on my own. I'm going to prove myself, and I'm going to make myself marketable through my own personal means. Like, the cost isn't, at the end of the day, the cost isn't really what I'm getting at. I'm getting at the methods are completely different. You can go the easier route. You can jump right into it.
Sure,
just
but at the end of the day, the artist who submitted to that is kind of the artist submitting to that contest is kind of still getting screwed over.
It's not a good deal.
Way.
It's not a good deal. I agree. That's you're missing out.
To say on the
James Gunn, with the money he got for writing the first Scooby-Doo movie, bought his first house. If you're getting $100, I agree, that's not a good. You're getting ripped off. You are absolutely getting ripped off. But if you know that, then don't do it. Right? You have that you have that option. You have the ability to say no. Sure,
but it's still very, very just slimy of Warner Brothers. I'm not denying that there's the option, but regardless, and then that's still screwed up.
And then that's up to the people to not do that.
Yeah, but people accept options like that because it's they know they're getting screwed over, but sometimes it's maybe this is my only way in, and that's what's messed up sometimes is the fact that sometimes people that is kind of that seemingly the only option. Problem. No, it's not. It's a
because Warner Brothers. Hold on, Warner Brothers isn't the ones telling them that this is their only option. They have other ways they could do it, but to them, this is the only option.
I mean, in an industry as difficult to break in as the film industry, how many other options are there?
I mean, if you want me to, you could go to Film Freeway, look at whatever's coming, look at various different film festivals. There's film festivals in every state, every major city, every region has film festivals.
Yeah, sure, but you're going under the assumption that the people submitting to this don't already know of these ways and haven't already tried these ways to get in and quite possibly have just seen failure after failure in getting in.
So that tells me that they're desperate. So they're going the route that, even though it's cool, we would all agree that's cool, but you're still getting screwed over. But they're so desperate that they're willing to bite that bullet, right?
Yeah, but at the end of the day, blaming the people for their decisions is really missing the point of the exploitation of these people, essentially.
I feel like there's a movie that covers exactly what we're talking about, and at the end of it, it villainizes the people for making those decisions and not fighting back against it.
What movie is this?
I don't know. It's just something I can see it in my head, but I can't think of it.
See,
actually, here's an idea. The Colonial Marines and Aliens, Weyland-Yutani, right? The evil corporation. They're supposed to bring back one alive, right?
Uh-huh.
That's their job as a company person. Look at Alien Romulus kind of covers the whole concept of Weyland-Yutani can control what you do a little bit better, I think. That's one thing that film does well is establishing when you work for Weyland-Yutani, you're owned by the company. So they're owned by Yutani, but the Colonial Marines and Aliens end up not doing that. They end up fighting back against what the company wants and just kills the aliens. That is a decision that they make to not fall in line with what Burke and the company wants. I get what you're saying, and I'm not disagreeing. I agree. It's a messed up way, and you're getting screwed over. If a script can give one person a brand new house paid off, and you're getting $100 for it and meeting the director, that's not a good deal. But if you're going into that with that understanding, at the end of the day, no matter how bad of a deal it is, if you make that deal, that's on you for making that deal. It's like gambling. You can't get upset at your dealer for dealing you a bad hand. That's the whole point of gambling, is you're putting money on a good or bad hand. You don't know. You're taking the odds and hoping it works out for you.
Again, I feel like that's kind of just missing. I feel like that's almost missing the forest for the trees of the issue. But regardless, that this whole tangent doesn't really matter too much to Megalon.
Either way, the kid in Megalon got screwed over because his design doesn't even exist.
Yeah, we don't even have the official, like the original design. Our closest approximation to it is, unfortunately, Red Alone.
Right, and from essentially what happened is, following its reveal on the show, it appeared in a couple of like marketing stunts, and then they just kind of killed it quietly, and then created Jet Jaguar.
Yeah, which Nakano kind of hated.
Do you remember exactly what he said? I don't remember.
Well, I remember reading that he kind of made suggestions to the design just to make it specifically less appealing, because he hated the idea of doing an Ultraman clone, essentially. Which is very ironic given how iconic Jet Jaguar is in the fandom.
Right, yeah, that is something. And honestly, rewatching it. Okay, I'm just going to jump ahead here, talking about the film a little bit here, because I'm curious what you have to say. I thought about that, like how many fans talk about and rave about Jet Jaguar. I'm kind of surprised that kind of happened. I mean, in the film, Jet Jaguar is not like I don't think he's a standout character. I mean, obviously he is the main monster, in air quotes, but I don't think, like, it's weird to look at him in this film and then think, yeah, 60 years later, he's going to be one of the most popular characters in the franchise. Like, that's kind of shocking.
I mean, you got to remember, like, in our case, we're so used to, like, these movies that, like, I think the most shocking and bizarre elements of Jet Jaguar as a character don't stand out to us as much, just because we've just fully accepted that years ago. Like, oh, it's a robot that just inexplicably gains its own sentience and turns that off and can become giant because the plot demands it. Right, naturally. That's just what Jet Jaguar does to us.
That description's just really funny, because, I mean, you're not wrong. You aren't wrong. And I think that's something that... It's funny because I think we embraced the campy kookiness of Jet Jaguar before we did Hedorah. You know? I think that speaks volumes to how portrayal is everything. You know, even though Godzilla vs. Hedorah is a children's film, more people are quick to point out Godzilla vs. Megalon is a children's film than the latter is. You know, I know I was reading through Steve Rifle's.
I mean, there's arguments that 54 is a children's film.
Right. But I did notice with this one specifically, and it's even in the audio commentary, there's a lot of people very quick to say, oh, this is a children's movie. This is a children's movie. If you look at it, it's a children's movie. It's a children's movie. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's not. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it was made in the second monster boom, which includes a lot of Henshin heroes, which is all made for children.
Right.
Godzilla's a children's character. Look at all the films since I'd say 1955. You know, it is a children's genre. But I do think it's very interesting how so many people of some sort of stature do want to quickly establish, oh, Godzilla versus Megalon's for kids. It's a kids movie. It's a children's movie. You know, and to a certain extent, we see that today with films like Godzilla Kong: The New Empire, right? You know, I might say, it's not a might. I do say that Godzilla Kong: The New Empire is schlocky and is boring and is a bunch of noise. But then you're going to have somebody else who's going to say, well, it's not made for you. It's made for the 13-year-old kids that just want to have fun.
Yeah, Adam Wingard agrees.
Yeah, I mean, there's literally a bonus feature that's like, Adam Wingard's a 5-year-old child at heart.
I mean, I was talking about how he literally says, like, yeah, it's a children's movie at the end of the day.
That's true. But, like, it's very interesting how that's the approach for Megalon. You know, they instead of, you know, looking at the film in generality, a lot of people are quick to just label it as a children's movie, and it's bad. It's bad because it's a children's movie, and if you look at it as a children's movie, it's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily like that. You know, I think that's something that this film's stigma is. I don't know if jaded. I mean, I don't think it's a jaded opinion, but I think it's an opinion that I wouldn't necessarily get behind myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like if you have to throw in there, oh, it's a children's movie, to explain why it's bad, I think that's...
I mean, yeah, that's just demeaning of, like, you know, movies, of what a movie made for families can be, you know?
Mm-hmm. Because I think at the end of the day, and this is going to cycle us back around to really like what we started with here, and then we can go into the film itself. This was a movie, a 81-minute movie, produced in 6 months. It was doomed from the get-go. It doesn't matter if it's a children's movie.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
If you're writing a script, getting your cast, film, you know, having your actors practice, memorize their lines, film the thing, edit the thing, promote the thing, and release it in 6 months, that turnaround on a skeleton crew, on a group of people who are not experienced in this work field, it is a recipe for insignificant outcomes.
Right. And it's genuinely impressive that the film is as watchable as it is.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. Especially, and look at the suits. 4 kaiju suits. Brand new kaiju suits.
They couldn't even do that for Gigan.
No,
like,
Gigan
they
was...
had one new suit.
And for this one, they made 4. And they reused 1, which was the Anguirus suit, for 1 sequence.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that is true.
And the fact that this, it's baffles me. It baffles me. Because that is the one thing that this film actually, like, you can tell that that's where the budget went. They went and made 4 new kaiju suits. Instead of doing miniatures, instead of doing, you know, fight sequences in places that are detailed, they utilize stock footage and empty sets to have the fight sequences, but they still created 4 new monster suits. Baffles me. Especially considering Gigan just had a brand new suit.
Right. Yeah, no, the new Gigan, the fact that it's a new Gigan suit is crazy. Like, you'd think with how quote-unquote terminal the budgets were from Hedera, knowing that this one was even lower, you'd think Gigan would just be completely reused, but no. He looks fairly different here. It's clearly new.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, I think that's where I kind of want to start us off into the actual breakdown of the film is just, I would implore anybody who's listening, if you're listening to us talk about it, we're a little over an hour and a half into this discussion and we're really starting to get into it. Don't look at this film upon your rewatch or, don't think of it as we talk about it. Don't think of it as a children's movie. I've never viewed Godzilla as a children's show or a children's series. I've always just viewed it as a movie series. I think viewing something as a children's show or series or movie has a weird negative connotation that shouldn't be a thing. It's similar to the argument of animation is only for children.
Yeah. I mean, it really goes back to the exact same issue, essentially.
Absolutely.
Films for children are just seen as lesser, so why give them much critical thought, essentially? Just accept it, Accept it or don't.
Exactly. And I going into this film, I'm not going to talk about it in the sense of it's a children's show. It's influenced like that. The writing's on the wall. This is inspired by the TV shows of the 1970s, but I don't think that's why this film falls or succeeds.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a completely different reason that this film does things right and does things wrong.
Man, really trying to hide say all this without quite revealing your full opinion yet, are we?
I don't think I have.
Yeah, I can tell. You're very specific with your wording here.
I am. So with that being said, I think we're ready to jump into the first Toho Izo production.
Sure. Getting started, we find out that in the year 1970X, there have been underground nuclear tests occurring.
And I must say, I do think it's interesting that within the first minute, we get the establishment of anti-nuclear themes.
Right.
Because...
I mean, this is essentially the inciting incident of the film. Like, this is what sets up everything that happens.
But I do think it's also funny how it's not brought up again until the very end, pretty much. It's brought up here. It's brought up following the introduction to our characters, and then it's brought up at the very, very end.
Right. I mean, the thing is here, the theme is not even secondary. I'd say it's tertiary to the entire film. It's there. It's not in any capacity the focus. Really here, I'd argue it's honestly more of an excuse just to have an opening scene with Godzilla and Anguirus on Monster Island.
Right, and
more than anything else.
I'm going to talk about this more once we get to the end of the film, but I almost think that putting this in here actually hurts the narrative more than anything.
Ah, interesting.
But yes, we do start off with some Teruyoshi Nakano's signature explosions on Monster Island.
And stock footage, of course.
Now, I believe the stock footage is all from Destroy All Monsters. We get a cameo from Rodan as well.
There is Ibra stock footage of the island blowing up as well.
Gotcha.
Which isn't even actually from Ibra. That's stock footage from another movie. Now that I remember.
And the whole thing is the underground nuclear explosions are causing earthquakes, and one of those earthquakes happens here on Monster Island, confirming that Monster Island and Monster Land are two separate islands.
Yeah. Meanwhile, these earthquakes are also happening across the globe around Japan near Lake Kiriyama, where we meet our main cast.
And we get the infamous...
the dolphin
fish
boat thing.
Dolphin. Yeah. We get introduced to our main trio of characters here, our only trio of characters, Hiroshi, Goro, and Rokuro. And I was trying to figure out, because I know there is a huge question of who are these characters and what is their, because full disclaimer, these characters don't have any development.
Yeah.
They're as stagnant as you could possibly make them. More stagnant than the characters from Godzilla vs. Gigan.
Less personality too.
Yeah, and honestly, that's kind of a growing trait in these 1970s films, because I mean the characters in Hedorah also are not very memorable. They don't do a lot, and they're not really important to the grand narrative in terms of like who they are and why they are the way they are.
Right.
But from my understanding, it's Rokuro, the kid, is the son or the brother to Goro.
He's Goro's brother.
Brother, okay. And then Hiroshi, the other main character, is
some guy.
Some guy. He calls Goro senpai the entire time.
Yeah.
Which I wondered if that meant like I was trying to figure out why, like in honorifics technicalities, what that would,
like, the movie gives you so little to work with that it's like, who knows why. It could literally just be because like Goro's an inventor. That could literally be it probably is really the whole extent of the reason, actually.
Interesting.
But yeah, no, so we meet them who have a Rokuro ends up almost getting caught up in the earthquakes, but is saved by one of Goro's inventions, establishing that part of his character, the one part of his character.
And then we immediately jump to them establishing like earthquakes are happening around the globe due to nuclear testings underground, and it's causing
these mysterious fissures also keep appearing. What's causing them?
Who knows? Dun dun dun. Now, during this sequence, there's a lot of moments in this film where you're in a vehicle, which is very interesting because just a couple of years prior in Godzilla, All Monsters Attack, vehicles were painted as this negative thing, this scary oncoming thing that could harm you. With how the cinematography is in All Monsters Attack. And then even in Godzilla vs. Gigan, we know that there was a scrapped element about how traffic accidents are negative, because they were very popular for tragedies to happen with vehicles. But this film completely sets that aside and embraces the use of vehicles, and in some sense, I think kind of shows them off a bit, which makes sense when you find out who was a sponsor on this film.
Oh, that's right. Yes, there was a car company sponsoring this film. That's right. Honda
Corporation did, and this isn't the first time Honda's sponsored a Godzilla movie. I know they sponsored Final Wars too.
Yeah. The motorbikes, yeah. That's right.
Honda and Kawasaki both sponsored the Final Wars. But that's an interesting change, right? Because we've had two Godzilla films that have tried to bring up or showcase vehicles in a negative light. Gamera vs. Guiron, another kaiju film, talks about traffic accidents as one of the leading bad things in the world. And now we have a film that highlights that, right, and
having these extensive car chase sequences as well.
They even this is something that drives me mad. They speed up every shot with the vehicles to make them look like they're going fast.
That's funny. That's actually funny.
I get really annoyed because it's so obvious, but I know they're just doing that to make it look different.
But yeah, no, that actually is a legitimately interesting point, and not something that I picked up on until because I didn't realize it was sponsored by these companies until after watching the film. But no, that's legitimately interesting, kind of funny.
It kind of reminds me of the whole Gamera versus Gyaos thing to a certain extent.
A little, yeah.
We even see in this film the kid has his own bike, right? He even ends up riding his own bike instead of walking. Again, different from what we see in Godzilla vs. Gigan, where they straight up say, we have our own legs, let's walk instead of riding in vehicles. In Hedorah, it also highlights vehicles as causes for pollution. Hedorah literally grabs all the vehicles it can and tries to absorb all the smog that they produce. And here we see the exact opposite on every level. Every character in this film has a vehicle. Every character in this film rides in a vehicle at one point, besides like the side characters that don't really do a whole lot. That, I think, speaks volumes to, you know, how this film ended up kind of approaching it, all of its stuff, you know? And I think that makes for a narratively different film because of that too. You know, we're now seeing a film that doesn't, it addresses the new anti-nuclear themes, but it goes back on vehicles and perhaps in a roundabout way pollution because of that. If you want to do some gymnastics there.
Yeah, if you really want to stretch it.
Whereas, you know, in previous films, that wasn't the case. And remember the whole concept in Godzilla vs. Gigan of Shukra and Mamagon is the idea of let's run a vote, let's see what people think is the worst thing ever, and let's create monsters from that. Jaguar is a direct response of that. He's directly derived from what Gigan was, you know, commenting on. Which makes Megalon such an interesting partner to Godzilla vs. Gigan because they are often paired up so frequently. But in a weird way, Megalon's almost the exact opposite of Gigan.
Yeah, in a strange roundabout way, it kind of is. And even the production itself, in spite of it being the same director, Jun Fukuda, it really feels like tonally it's similar, but it feels like a completely different film. Gigan,
it looks different.
Yeah, that too. I mean, Gigan is trying to recapture the magic of the 60s Godzilla and honestly kind of failing at it. Whereas Megalon, Megalon at the very least is doing its own thing for better or for worse.
Right. I know one thing that kind of surprised me is like around the 11-minute 40-second mark. What happens is as our characters return home, they find out that their home's been broken into, and there's a car chase that follows after. Now, in the car chase, and this isn't the only time we see this, there are crane shots, which I don't recall in previous Godzilla films. I feel like this is one of the first times they actually utilized moving crane shots in a Godzilla film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even like we're just talking about the drama unit here, but even like the special effects stuff, that is a whole different experience to Gigan special effects in scenes and how they are approached in their camera work, their editing, essentially everything. It's completely different energy to anything seen in Gigan.
Yeah, no, I think you do bring a great point there. It's kind of off-putting when you actually take a step back and you look at these two films. I mean, virtually same crew, right? Just on a different budget. But they couldn't be more different. Especially when you look into how like Gigan also explores the idea of how technology is a negative thing. Don't embrace technology, push back against technology.
Right, yeah.
And we have the hero of this story is Jaguar.
Mm-hmm.
A robot with AI abilities.
Right.
That's such an interesting change. And honestly, I think you could chop it up to the fact that Shinichi Sekizawa wasn't the one writing it. I think people say that Sekizawa didn't like including politics into his scripts. I think that's something that people have claimed. But he definitely wanted to say something. Whereas here, I think with the inclusion of having Jun Fukuda be the script writer, we're seeing a very different film because of that. I think it's no surprise that Fukuda wasn't one of the main directors at Toho. He was a B-movie director. He was given the stuff that they didn't want to give Ishiro Honda. And so we do get a very drastic, different film because of that. And I think that does speak a little bit to how Fukuda was as a creative when he was given more control.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting just seeing this, in that light of this being like, yeah, kind of exactly what Gigan briefly criticized, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. We said that Godzilla vs. Gigan was like the Godzilla Kong New Empire of the Showa era. I'm starting to think that perhaps I was wrong with that assessment.
What, that perhaps Megalon is the new empire?
Yeah, maybe Gigan's the king of the monsters and Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah, the king of the monsters, trying to recapture that 60s Godzilla magic.
Yeah, and then Godzilla versus Megalon is the GVK of the modern day.
Except I can actually tolerate this one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at a GVK's, Wingard very much has like, if you look at how he approached it, it was like very opposite of what Doherty was trying to do.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it kind of makes, it's kind of a nice little mirrored effect.
But yeah, no, after the chase sequence, the Seatopian agents get away, but they've left a little bit of a trace of them behind, some red sand that ends up being analyzed by Jinkawa Hiroshi. Gets it analyzed and discovered, hey, this stuff from Easter Island, what the hell is this doing here?
Right. Yeah, which the Easter Island thing kind of was funky to me, if you ask me. I don't really understand the inclusion of it. You know what I mean?
I mean, the thing is, like, the Seatopians are, like, descended from the people of Lemuria?
Yes.
Yeah, those are, like, real people. Or that was, it was, like, a real concept. Like, yeah.
Right.
So I think that's where that comes from.
That would make sense. Now, I do want to say we get some great shots of like the interior of Goro's laboratory and house. This is a really kooky house, and I'm all for it.
Oh yeah, it's so funky. I love it. Though sometimes it does sometimes look a little empty in certain shots with the production design, but other than that, it's so funky. I dig it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, the set design for this film in general is just kind of a little empty, but also a little out there as well.
Yeah, it almost has like its own appeal,
right?
Because I think this set and and especially the set for like the Seatopians, like it feels like there's something missing, but it's still such an interesting set to look at. Yeah,
I wholeheartedly agree.
Following the discussions about the Red Sand and Easter Island, the Jet Jaguar is completed, and he finally gets awoken as the Seatopian agents end up kidnapping Lokuro.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, honestly, how they kind of just pull up and kidnap him. I will say, I thought that was really humorous. I
They
think
just hit
there's a
him in
lot
the
of
face with the car door.
yeah, they do. There's a lot of moments in this film that are a little like that are pretty funny. A bit, they're unintentional, I think.
Oh, 100%. Like they end up right the moment right after this, pretty much where they take the kid to get him into the house, and one of the guys he's coming in to like not to shoot the our main characters with like this knockout gas, but as he comes in, Jet Jaguar just bows his head, and the guy just runs into it and falls over.
Yeah, that I thought was hilarious.
It's probably one of the funniest moments in the movie.
And then dude gets back up and they like
inexplicable because Jet Jaguar does nothing else in the scene. He just stands there for the rest of the time. Doesn't help anymore.
yeah, he's just kind of there.
It's just so bizarre.
And then speaking of bizarre, we get introduced to our villain. I struggle to call them villains because we get established. So the Cetopians, they're losing their land. They're losing their civilization due to underground nuclear testing, which is why they're fighting back finally, and they need to unleash Megalon upon the world to fight back for them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, regardless, they are still very much antagonists, but
right,
yeah, it is mildly funny. How it is mildly humorous that the Cetopians have these legitimately understandable and very reasonable motivation, but the film doesn't really play with that at all.
Right.
And they are also somehow aligned with the Nebula M Space Hunter aliens somehow.
Yeah, I didn't really get that. I think that's kind of just some sloppy connection to the prior film that they tried to throw in here.
How they know those guys is anybody's guess.
Maybe before humanity existed, they like lived in peace and harmony.
Maybe, but it's I don't know. The Gigan kind of implies that the aliens had only just appeared, like when they started working on World's Children's Land. Like it's kind of implied that they'd only just recently appeared on Earth.
You have a point, actually.
So even if you want to argue like, oh, they knew these guys have known them for a long time, and it's just been like a long-standing like alliance. It's like, where did it come from? My best guess is like the best justification you can have for it, I guess, is advanced technology. Somehow they communicated.
Well, they have enough technology to awaken a monster.
Yeah, but not enough technology to talk it out with Earthlings, apparently.
Yeah, it's a little weird how they just suddenly are like, send Megalon!
Yeah.
Go on, Megalon! Instead of like approaching him and being like,
maybe I guess Antonia's just like he's just a dictatorship, I suppose. That's probably all it is.
I mean, considering that the women in this film don't get any speaking roles because of him, that might be a fair assessment.
Yeah, this is strangely the most sexist of the Showa Godzilla movies.
Now, as Megalon's rising to the surface, Goro and I don't want to call him Ken. Let me get his name.
Bro, I swear, every time I genuinely remembered his name as Ken, but no, that's the actor's character in Hedera.
Right.
Every time I think he's Ken.
Rokudo and Goro are trapped in a van.
Yeah, they get kidnapped, and they're thrown in the van for some reason. Hiroshi is just left there.
Did you figure that out?
I mean, obviously, it's there for plot information to be relayed, to him so that he can relate to the other characters. But the thing is, on a narrative level, my big issue with it is you could make this work if it was Goro. Because the Seatopians want Jet Jaguar, so they keep Goro. They could keep Goro because they want him to like reprogram Jet Jaguar or something. Similar to how in Gigan or Mechagodzilla they have the human scientists or the brother guy to help the aliens out in those films, you know? So why not keep Goro there so that he can have the plot information relayed to him and he can actually have a reason to be there because the aliens want Jet Jaguar.
Right. It would make so much more sense. It really would. I'm wondering if it's because his, not Goro's actor, but the Hiroshi's actor might have been a little more popular.
I mean, they were like from what I recall, they were both more or less like relatively inexperienced actors at the time.
Right. I know there was a concern because Goro, the actor for Goro, Katsuhiko Sasaki, because his face was a little more rounder than others, they didn't think he could be a leading man.
Mm. I mean, bear in mind, but he's also the one who had who kind of came from nepotism as well. Because his father was Minoru Chiaki.
Well, his father also went on record saying that he refused to help his son actually get into the film industry.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know for sure what reasoning, but I feel like realistically it's probably just a symptom of how rushed this whole thing was. Realistically, like that's probably the likely answer.
If I remember correctly, they were just kind of coming up with lines on the spot sometimes.
Exactly. So it's probably the reason.
Also, another weird thing is that they have Megalon, but they can't control him, which is the whole point of having Jet Jaguar, which is such a weird reasoning. I mean, this film's plot kind of falls apart when you analyze it.
Yeah. Yeah, they unleash Megalon and start getting Jet Jaguar to guide him, pretty much.
But that being said, back at the house where Hiroshi is still trapped, he ends up breaking free and attacking the Seatopian who's controlling Jet Jaguar. There's a lot of really rough and tumble grungy fights in this movie, and I'm all for it.
Right, yeah. But the actual choreography for it is fairly strong for what you would see from these types of fights in say the next movie, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. I think it flows and just feels a lot better than some of the combat in that film in a couple scenes.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. And another scene that also I think does a decent job is the car chase following the fight sequence.
Yeah.
Where we have a bike and a car chasing our main character. And it's okay. I will say this was where I started to realize there's a lot of fast-paced editing in this film, and the editing I think is a little too choppy. That wasn't something I noticed. I was like, man, how many times is this camera angle going to change before we get through this moment in the car chase or whatever? I also think it's funny we end up in a quarry. That's prime Tokusatsu.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the other Seatopian agent ends up continuing his journey to try and dispose of Goro and Rokudo. But he ends up getting kicked out by the two drivers after he's a little suspicious and ends up threatening them.
Which is hilarious, by the way. I love how they literally just throw him out and he just kind of tumbles down a hill.
Yeah. Bro, the death of these Seatopian agents is actually hilarious. Both of their deaths. All the humans in this film
when they die, it's actually really gruesome.
Yeah, it's violent, and it makes it way funnier.
Now, following the death of the Seatopian agent, the truck drivers end up just dropping off this unknowingly human-occupied shipping container. They plan to drop it off at a dam and just move on when Megalon shows up due to plot conveniences.
Yeah, of course.
And attacks the dam.
Yeah, and we get that the infamous moment of Megalon just hitting the container and just our two characters inside it just being completely unharmed.
Yeah, I was really surprised by how they were able to survive. I thought that was wild.
No concussions at all, either.
No, they just kind of roll out and they're fine. I'm like, what? There's no way. Now, I feel like up to this point, we have mentioned the stock footage, but we haven't really complained about it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we do get some Mothra versus Godzilla stock footage of people running away, and then blended in with some War of the Gargantuas and Destroy All Monsters military stock footage. I did feel like the military stock footage went on a little too long. Not by much. Honestly, if they cut out like 20 seconds of it, I think it would be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And I think it actually is from Godzilla vs. Gigan. I think that they just pulled from that film, which is pulling from the other two films.
The thing with a lot of the stock footage in Gigan is that a lot of, like, with this military stock footage, most of what they took in Gigan is pretty much, like, some of it is just, like, almost uninterrupted, like, sequences almost, like little sequences in these, in those military, like, set pieces.
Right. And to a certain extent, I was like, why are we showcasing this much military action against Megalon?
Right.
But we do get some nice monster action between Megalon and the military through stock footage.
Yeah, you got some early cameos from Gigan. One where you can clearly see his head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they like showcasing the close-up shots of Gigan's claw hitting the space, the airplanes.
Right.
And it's like, okay, it's clearly Gigan. Come on, guys.
But again, the one with his head just straight up in the shot is, I think, pretty egregious.
Mm-hmm. There's a scene where you can kind of spot Gyra.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they literally ripped that. Like, Gigan already did that moment, and they're just literally repeating that beat.
Right. And then we get kind of shown, so they do a smart idea with how Megalon's beam is. It comes from his horn, but it looks just like King Ghidorah.
Right.
So anytime you see a close-up shot of like a military vehicle getting attacked by Megalon, it's just stock footage from Invasion of Astro Monster or Ghidorah, the three-headed monster.
Or Gigan.
Or Gigan, that's true.
Because they used some of those modified shots in Gigan where they took footage of like the tanks being destroyed from like King Kong Versus, but put the Ghidorah beams on it.
Right. Now, Rex, out of curiosity, so you're talking about egregiousness and we're talking stock footage and whatnot. What was your thoughts on how, like, the extensive amount of jump cuts in this film?
Like where specifically? Like,
I've noticed throughout the entire film, there was a ton of moments where it's like, okay, so we're getting quick blink and you'll miss it jump cuts throughout all of this.
I didn't really find it terribly distracting, honestly. I don't know. I think I did notice like a handful of them, but none of them were like not terribly egregious. Like I thought the editing, I definitely noticed it was a lot faster than say Gigan. Like there's so much more energy in this film than Gigan's. How lethargic Gigan is.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree there.
And I'll give it credit where credit is due, in spite of the fact that there's probably close to an equal. I'd say there's maybe a little less stock footage in this. It is the stock footage here is less annoying.
I agree. I noticed that myself. I was like, there is. I think the editing is very sloppy, and there's a ton of jump cuts.
Definitely. There's a very sloppy editing in this, and I do think these earlier bits with stock footage before like the climax, like when Megalon's going on his rampage and the military and all the military stuff, I think that's the worst of it. I think that's when it's
I agree.
By far its worst.
I agree there. But it's also nice, right? Because I think the issue with Gigan is, first of all, they were trying to like manipulate each shot, day for night stuff. Mm-hmm. But then they also were doing the extensive sequences of just pure stock footage. And I think not doing that ended up helping this film a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, Gigan also just has the issue of like the monster action itself, like just in general, always tends to go on too long.
Right.
Whereas here, it's a lot tighter. So these, like the Megalon's rampage in the city through mostly Ghidorah stock footage is a lot tighter. So it ends up being just a lot less tiring.
Oh, for sure.
By comparison to Gigan's surprisingly extensive destruction sequence.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I remember like once we got to the final fight, I was like, man, this is actually moving along very nicely. I was very happy with it. It didn't feel like I was watching plain noise,
right? Yeah.
Like it was for Gigan.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of like Gigan and whatnot, so we talked about this in the last episode about how Godzilla has to show up at the very beginning, which he does here, but he doesn't show up again until about the 48-minute mark.
Yeah, no. You kind of almost forget he's in the movie.
Right, and then even then, he does appear in this moment, and then he's gone again for another 20 minutes. And
20 might be overselling how long he's gone.
It's
like maybe like
16.
5-10, yeah.
It's 16.
Damn, really?
Unless you want to count the one intercut of him swimming. Godzilla does nothing from about 49 minutes till a minute and 4, or an hour and 4. But I think that's interesting too, the idea that Godzilla's hardly in this film. He is not he's irrelevant until the final fight.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I almost feel like that they made him more of a plot MacGuffin device in this film than an actual character, which kind of goes back against the whole anthropomorphizing Godzilla thing that they were trying to do at this point.
I mean, but they still give him like a ton of personality to make up for that, though.
Yeah, they do, because this is easily the most lively Godzilla has been, right?
Yeah, I mean, all the monsters in this have a personality to them. Like Megalon and Gigan are these very cartoonish villains. Megalon is very childlike in a lot of his scenes, especially when he's like jumping around sort of erratically.
Yeah. There's definitely a bit of chaos going on with the monsters.
Right.
And even like Jet Jaguar, how he like at some points will do his own thing, and then at some points he'll do what he's told to do. And it's like you can't really be in the know of what's going on. And so stuff like that, I think it helps you stay on the edge of your seat, when you're watching the film and you're trying to like figure out what exactly is going on.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't really a terrible much else to the actual plot of this film other than like, of course, I don't think we mentioned this, but Goro regains control over Jet Jaguar. They end up killing the other, Hiroshi and Rokuro end up killing the other.
They don't kill him.
Well, they hurt him and he dies. Same difference.
He dies from Megalon.
Yabba dabba do.
Now, I do want to say the way that like they like throw an airplane into his face and it becomes a blood sprinkler. It's like, oh my god.
It's so funny.
Brutal. But then Gigan does kill him, or not Gigan, Megalon does kill him with a rock on accident.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a plane battle. Obviously, as mentioned, Godzilla is Jet Jaguar.
Gigan shows up.
Yeah, but Jet Jaguar's grabbing Godzilla first.
Yeah.
And then we get to
Gigan
to the start of our main fight.
Right, which is about 57 minutes into the film. So basically the last 20 minutes is in just this fight between initially what is Jet Jaguar and Megalon, and then Gigan, Megalon, and Jet Jaguar, and then Godzilla, Jet Jaguar, Gigan, Megalon. And honestly, I will say this, the film moves by very fast. You can even tell like it happens over the course of what appears to be a day, right? It's not a very long film, and in many ways it definitely does feel more like a Henshin Hero TV series because of that, like TV series episode, because it doesn't feel like you're really watching something happen over the course of a couple days. It really does seem like all of this happened in about one day, maybe two, maybe three. Like the opening might have been a couple days, but once you actually get into the narrative, it's all within one day.
Right, yeah. Also, I forgot to mention, I think it's pretty funny how Jinkawa and Rokuro go with dealing with the Cetopian agent by themselves and not getting the help of the military.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very funny.
Yeah. The absence of the military is very interesting.
Like they help
it's probably a budget
to like regain control of Megalon, but then they just don't really do anything afterwards. By this point,
right?
They kind of just pull up.
Well, I would even go as far as to say that this film has the same issue that Godzilla vs. Gigan does, and that's once we get to this final fight, our humans are literally standing on a hillside.
100%. Yeah. There's basically nothing left for them to do by this point. It's actually a little worse than Gigan, where they don't even really contribute to the actual fight. It's purely the monsters by this point.
Right. And, you know, the unfortunate thing is with our three main characters, none of them have really been developed. None of them have really any character traits. So you do get like these three characters that we're supposed to be watching the fight along with, but they have nothing to bring us. Like it does end up being, okay, can this fight entertain you, or are you checking out?
Right, yeah. But where this does have an advantage over Gigan is that this fight is very, very different in how it's shot and edited. Like by comparison, this action compared to just typical kaiju action, there's a lot less usage. It's more close up and like really in the face of each of the kaiju or robot here. Like there's a lot less wide. There's more camera movement too. I noticed there's a lot more just energy and things moving around.
Mm-hmm. There's a shot. It's literally the last shot of Godzilla, and I'm jumping way far ahead here. But they utilized the rigging in the ceiling of the studio, and they had a camera do like this nice dolly shot, and it tracks Godzilla, and like it moves in, but like as it moves to the side, it's also following Godzilla and showing you the stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really beautiful. I am a sucker for dolly shots, for truck shots, especially when they move. Anytime you see that in a film, I'm gonna talk about it. I love those types of shots. And this film, and crane shots, I love crane shots too. This film utilizes those more so than any previous Showa Godzilla film has.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very interesting. Especially the liveliness of all of this comes down to when they were designing and choreographing this final fight, they wanted it to be inspired by tag matches in wrestling. They wanted it to be a wrestling tag match. And it's very obvious to see, like, when you see that. And I think, to a certain extent, this fight ends up being way more memorable than the one in Gigan.
Oh, 100%. There, as I said, there's just so much more energy here. Like, there is definitely something lost in this fight with it approach to cinematography and specifically like the higher camera angles to what you would typically see in some of these films. Like, you definitely lose that sense of scale. I don't think it's completely lost, but it's definitely nowhere near as effective as other films. Like, even Gigan maintains that in how its fights are shot.
Right. As much as I do love my crane and dolly shots and truck shots and those high angle shots, it does, and a lot of it too is because they had no money to make an actual set. It had to be a wide open field.
Yeah.
There's nothing to really gauge. Okay, what's the size here? The
beginning of the sequence has some buildings, but by the end of the sequence, you don't see them after the beginning of the fight.
Right. Yeah, and, I will say this, there are a couple of shots where they put some trees in the foreground and the monsters in the background that look good. I do love the whole Godzilla, like, when he does show up, he has this little walk he does for, like, it's a solid, 2 minutes. The dude's walking up. It's like he's on the runway, he's about to get into the ring.
Yeah, and he's just absolutely pumped.
Yeah. And it's really fun, and it works with this Godzilla suit. I love this Godzilla suit. This suit is probably one of my favorites.
Yeah. No, 100%. This is one of the best of the show.
He looks mean, but he also looks...
I don't think he looks mean. He just... He's kind of adorable, but it works in this film. It works with the tone. Yeah. What? What?
I wasn't expecting to hear you say the word adorable today.
It is in fact a part of my English vocabulary.
Clearly vocabulary isn't.
Yeah, I know, I did butcher that. But he's such a goober like everyone else in this film. It's great.
Yeah.
Great design.
Yeah. We do get some shots returning from Gigan where Godzilla and Gigan are fighting. So we get the Shoshingeki Godzilla suit again, which I always enjoy. I love that suit.
Oh, it's one of the best as well, yeah.
But again, there's not a lot of stock footage in this final fight.
Right.
And it works so much better. It's so much more entertaining.
Right. Like, really, the stock footage is only used for Gigan to showcase his, just his abilities, more or less, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's more or less the extent of it.
Yeah, and I think that when they made that decision, that ended up working out very well for them, because it's not as obnoxious as, say, Gigan, where you have Ghidorah doing, showing up in 3 different places, and Godzilla and Anguirus doing, 3 different things at the same time. It's honestly, this film is a little refreshing with how it approaches all of this.
Right. Yeah, refreshing is actually a good way to put it. It does feel very different, and that especially after a movie that tries and fails to recapture what worked in the 60s, having this breath of fresh air, I think, is really necessary.
Yeah. And honestly, I think this Godzilla almost feels a little more akin to a 60s Godzilla in terms of how he acts. Because in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Godzilla straight up saves Mothra a couple times, right? Gigan, in Gigan, he doesn't really do that. He just kind of lets Anguirus get beaten up, and then he goes over and beats up the monster, and then they talk, and then they fight.
I mean, to be fair,
again.
most of the Gigan fight, Godzilla's getting wailed on as well.
That's true. I don't know. There's something about how Godzilla's like equally fighting and helping Jet that just works so well here. And speaking of working so well, one of my favorite things about this fight is during like right before it really ends, during like the Ring of Fire sequence, the lighting is beautiful. It is like it's this like apocalyptic like orange and yellow, and like the way that it's lit up on all of the suits, especially the Godzilla suits, is genuinely really well done.
Yeah. I mean, this whole Ring of Fire bit, which is essentially completely stolen from Kamen Rider vs. Shocker's ending, it ends up taking that whole sequence from the ending of that film and just doing it way better, in all honesty, because it's so much more dramatic because the fire is just massive here.
Yeah.
Whereas in Kamen Rider vs. Shocker, it's a very, very small fire by comparison that like it almost looks like they could walk over it. Whereas here it's like you actually believe, okay, if these suit actors walk over this fire, they're going to have some serious injuries here.
Well, if I remember correctly, the jet suit was actually
like
prone to be like really flammable. And like if he actually got lit on fire, he was a goner.
Which is funny when you consider that at some points you can see Godzilla catching on fire.
Yeah. Oh, also, I forgot to mention this, but the animation for the Godzilla beam here is really good.
Oh, yeah.
I love the animations for the Godzilla beam here.
Mm.
And then towards the end here, we do get, Gigan runs away, and then, Godzilla and Jet kind of start taking back after the whole Ring of Fire sequence. We enter into the following day.
Sorry, going back to the Ring of Fire sequence for a second, I will actually bring up the editing here that you mentioned. There is definitely a lot of jump cuts here, as you mentioned. It's trying to make the scene more intense.
Yes.
I don't think it really... It does create that intensity, but it also just feels very jarring, and how there's all these like jump cuts and then these weird insert shots like of Gigan's feet and stuff.
Yeah, and then I know they repeat a couple of shots like Megalon firing his like grenades.
Oh yeah, that's an infamous bit, yeah.
I think there is a little, if they had more time in the editing room, I think this would look better.
Yeah. Really, I think probably the issue here is just this rushed production.
I think post is where this film suffered the most. Post-production.
But as this fight concludes, I have enjoyed myself so much more than any of Gigan's battle.
Are we gonna bring up the tail slide, or are we just gonna kind of let it slide?
That was very funny. You were very funny.
I really had to
move on from that.
I just had to double up on that and really give you a real kicker.
Yeah.
I will say, I think the way that Jet and Godzilla end up beating Godzilla or Megalon and Gigan is actually kind of brutal. Like Gigan gets his arms broke and Megalon gets like beat up.
Bro, it's so funny when Gigan has left, and then Godzilla and Jet Jaguar just stand over Megalon and look down on him. And it's like this overhead shot. That is hilarious.
It's really funny. Yeah. Now, okay, so Megalon ends up running away, right? And then the Cetopians are like, seal all the things. Let's get out of here, Okay, so this is where I think the film really, really suffers. And that is, so we establish at the beginning of the film, Cetopia is basically under attack, right? Like they're getting their civilization's getting destroyed by underground nuclear testing. So they send Megalon and call for the help of Gigan because they have to save their civilization because of the nuclear weapons being used against them.
Right, and now they've basically been bullied back into submission and just accepting their fate, or maybe fighting
Exactly.
another day.
And I think to a certain extent that's it's not a well thought through ending, because it leaves it open with the idea of, okay, so the bad guys are still the bad guys, even though they're in the exact same situation that like Earth was in Invasion of Astro Monster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little weird to like truly feel like they're the villains when you look at it from that perspective. And, you know, considering that the nuclear weapons are used against them, in a way, it almost feels like Godzilla's fighting for nuclear weapons, you know? I think it's a very slippery slope for how the film should end.
Right. I mean, the issue is it's just the script is unfortunately just sloppily put together.
Right. Because they do try to, like, tie it off and say, like, you know, humanity should stop testing underground and maybe they won't come back. But I don't think that's a good enough way to, like, do that.
Right, especially after you've just bullied them into submission.
It's not like how, you know, in 54, like, yes, they use a nuclear bomb equivalent to kill Godzilla, but then they're like,
there was a gravitas to that.
Yes, there, you know, we lost a great man. And then on top of all that, even though Godzilla is gone, if humanity continues to use nukes, another Godzilla will appear one day. That alone is so much better. Like you said, the gravitas there, it's beautiful. Here it feels very half-assed. Godzilla and Jichaiku do shake hands, though.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool? And then Godzilla walks off into the sunset with like 3 more minutes left. And those 3 minutes are entirely for Jet to walk with our 3 main characters to one of my favorite songs from the Godzilla series.
Yeah.
It's important to note there is an alternate version of this film that does have an editing error here, where you can see when the director called action for the actors to run. But since 1990, they fixed that, and that no longer is in the final.
So that was that in the original like theatrical release of the film? Wow, that is and you really can see it. Funny.
You can see it in the public domain cuts from Cinema Shares.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's important to note Godzilla vs. Megalon was released theatrically in the United States in summer of 1976 by Cinema Shares, the same company that did Godzilla vs. Gigan, and who would do Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. The film, this is where I think Godzilla vs. Megalon is very important to note. This film single-handedly is the reason the Godzilla fandom is alive.
Mm-hmm.
This film, it kind of had a Night of the Living Dead situation, and Cinema Shares forgot to include the copyright notice.
Oopsie.
So it, in air quotes, fell into public domain, and because of that, it got distributed. It got shown on Mystery Science Theater 3000, on TV, VHSs, DVDs even.
Yeah.
It lived a very flourishing life in the United States. And it's easily the most seen Godzilla film, period. It even got primetime television slots on NBC.
Mm-hmm.
It did very well. It made over $5 million at the U.S. box office, which was actually really good. And it had a great marketing behind it. It had great marketing. And so, you know, even though the film does show up on a plethora of lists of like 100 of the worst movies ever made, the worst films ever made, cinema's trash, you know, people like to throw Megalon on there. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if you ignore the post-production side of the film, I think it's still a very decent film when you consider everything. They didn't even have auditions. Like for Robert Dunham, there was no interview process. They just said, "You're perfect. Here's your clothes. You're going to be filming tomorrow." Like, this is the definition of a rushed film. They, to my understanding, most things were done in one take. Like, they didn't have time. They didn't have the assets of film to do more than one take most of the time. It is a miracle that this film turned out the way it did. And honestly, I don't think it's a bad film for how it turned out.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, on the topic of 100 worst movies ever made and whatnot, thing is, I truly don't think that any of the Godzilla movies really quite are on that level.
I agree. I agree.
I don't think any Godzilla movie is truly on that level. Even the worst of the franchise.
I agree. I think when people make the worst films of all time, they haven't seen everything.
Right.
Let's be real here. If we're going to talk about the worst film we've seen on the podcast, I don't think we're going to list off a Gamera, Godzilla, or honestly anything that's had a budget remotely.
Right. No, exactly.
Honestly, if I'm thinking worst films, I'm thinking maybe Stacy, Zillafoot, Red Tears. I don't even think Red Tears I would put on that.
I would not say Red Tears. I mean, the thing is,
I would.
On the one hand, with low budget films like that, I don't think it's entirely fair to call them some of the worst films. Sure, on a production value standpoint, yeah, they're worse, but also what are you gonna do when say Zillafoot is made on a budget of $200? Yeah, shocker.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, in the case of something like Megalon, at the end of the day, this is... Look, I'm not going to deny this not scripted. I'm not going to deny the scripting issues here. That is definitely a major flaw. And that is probably the one real thing where I'm okay, sure, you can there's an argument for this being a very bad film. Sure, there's massive scripting holes. So this story just doesn't things just don't make sense. A Jet Jaguar can reprogram himself as the plot demands it,
Real quick, we forgot to mention that Jet Jaguar no longer has that ability at the end of the movie.
Exactly. He just can when the script demands it.
He's the scariest AI creation of all.
But yeah, no, Megalon, in the context of it as a film that was made in an absurdly short production span with as Nakano said for Hedera, a terminal budget smaller than what he considered terminal. Mm-hmm. For that context alone, it's the fact that this is a functional film, a somewhat functional film, is incredible. But then on top of that, the fact that it's actually, I think, entertaining is a whole nother thing.
Likewise. Now, Rex, do you want to bring up anything else? I've got a couple more factoids I wanted to cover, and then we can do our final thoughts, casting crew, and then ranking.
I mean, I was kind of doing a little bit of my final thoughts in there almost.
Interesting thing to note, the Megalon suit was apparently the heaviest Megalon, the heaviest monster suit up until that point.
Oh yeah,
Steve Rifle.
The drill hands were in particular very difficult to work with.
Mm-hmm. Steve Rifle said that the inclusion of underground testing could be inspired by the Kankin underground nuclear bomb tests that occurred November 6, 1971 in the United States military. But even he said they don't really acknowledge it. It's not really there. This film doesn't really cover that. It's very surface level, Apparently, Jet Jaguar was supposed to eventually get a TV series following this, but that didn't come to fruition because it wasn't popular. This film ended up getting 980,000 attendees, which was the lowest the franchise had ever received, which is quite depressing because Gigan, I think it improves and fixes everything that Gigan had wrong, which is weird because this film has a lot less to say than Gigan's trying to say. But that does kind of go to show that sometimes trying to be metaphorical isn't everything, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, the things that Gigan's trying to comment on ends up in the final film being so haphazard and just like, yeah, just sloppy in its own way, where it's like,
right.
There's a little more substance than Megalon, but not a lot.
Outside of that, the film was shot on location mostly. There were only 2 sound stages, like I previously established. And I don't know if I said this, but there was stock footage from Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster, and Invasion of Astro Monster. They both got some moments in there with Megalon's beam. So with that, I'm out of facts and whatnot outside of, cast and crew. So do you want to do cast and crew and then final thoughts, or do you want us to do our final thoughts?
Let's do final thoughts now, since I kind of already started it a little.
Yeah, go ahead.
Going into this film, I was kind of a little dreading it, in all honesty, because, obviously I'm doing, with the fact I've gone to see Minus Color 54 and I'm going to see Raids Again and Mothra Versus. I've been worried that I was going to be, a little bit Godzilla'd out, in all honesty. But...
There's still time.
Yeah, I know. And with Megalon in particular, my last viewing... I was not so kind to the film. I honestly found it pretty much a slog to sit through last time, compared to Gigan, which the previous viewing I'd had before our episode on that one, the viewing before that, I quite enjoyed the film. Whereas here, my opinion is almost completely just swapped around, where Gigan was a lot less entertaining, and here I was actually enjoying myself a fair bit more than I expected. But I think here it's not necessary. This film doesn't just... It's the energy here. The actual... the editing can be sloppy, but it's so much less lethargic than Gigan, and that goes a long way for me. Especially in a film as paper thin in its writing as this, it kind of needs to not be lethargic and maybe just have those little, bizarre, funny moments, like when Jet Jaguar just bows and that guy runs into it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. It's faster pace, it's got some entertaining elements, and it does everything that Godzilla vs. Gigan wanted to do, sans the metaphors, but better. It's a tighter version of that story, that script. But it's like we've established, it's still choppy. It's a very choppy story. It's a very choppy script. The use of stock footage in this film is not nearly as repulsive as it is in Gigan. And the lacking of the day for night stuff is so welcomed. Overall, the movie does lack in its actual editing, the post-production side of it, and there is no real metaphor and meaning, and what it does have kind of conflicts at the end and makes you question, okay, so what are we trying to say here? And I do think that's a little obnoxious, but outside of those, the film doesn't really overstay its welcome, and it provides a fun watch for anybody who's wanting to throw on a movie and enjoy it. It's not good. It's by far not a good Godzilla movie. It's not a good movie in general. But it is not boring. It is not entertaining. It is not bad. I think you can get enjoyment out of this if you can just watch it. And, I'm kind of surprised that I actually ended up really enjoying this by the end of our conversation. Initially, when I rewatched it, I was like, ooh, this isn't very good. There's not really a lot here. But upon thinking about it and really meditating on it, the film's not good, but I'd rather take this over Gigan.
Yeah, literally. Which is a conclusion I'm shocked I have come to.
So I imagine that means we should probably do our ranking. But before then, you want me to do our cast and crew?
Go ahead.
Katsuhiko Sasaki, who played Goro Ibuki, was in Detsujin 17, Terror of Mechagodzilla, Godzilla vs. Biollante, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, Prophecies of Nostradamus, Evil of Dracula, Sten's voice actor in Godzilla 2014, and Godzilla King of the Monsters. He was a voice actor in the Japanese dub of Jack the Giant Slayer and Clash of the Titans. Yutaka Hayashi, who played Hiroshi Jinkawa, was in Kikaida. Hiroyuki Kawase, who played Rokuro Ikube, was in Dotsukedan, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, Return of Ultraman, Mirror Man, and Zone Fighter. And then Robert Dunham, who played Anton, was in Mothra, Dogora, Mothra vs. Godzilla, The Green Slime, and Espy. As for your crew, now I'm going to do similar to what I did last time, where I didn't give you all of it, because if I did, then we would be here for another 10 minutes listing off just Tomoyuki Tanaka's. So your crew includes Tomoyuki Tanaka, your producer, Shinichi Sekizawa, your story writer, Teruyoshi Nakano, your special effects director, Reichiro Manabe, your composer who worked on Supergiants, The Destruction of the Human Race, and Supergiants, The Clash of the Spaceship and the Satellite, The Vampire Doll, Lake of Dracula, Evil of Dracula, Godzilla vs. Hedorah, and The Inferno. And then Jun Fukuda, your writer-director who worked on The Secret of the Talesian, Ibra, Horror of the Deep, Son of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, Espy, The War in Space, Zone Fighter, and the television series version of Submersion of Japan. Now, Rex, are you ready to do our rankings?
Sure.
We are 15 in.
Oh boy.
Can you believe that?
That's crazy. We're getting scarily close to the halfway mark.
I know. Let's see, there is 38 films, so we're four movies away.
Pretty much.
Number 15, I don't think I'm curious where we're going to end up putting all this. So, number 15, I have Godzilla Raids Again.
Likewise. I wonder if my opinion will change tomorrow.
I'll be curious to hear that next week.
Number 14.
Number 4.
Godzilla Kong the New Empire.
Likewise.
13.
Number 13, I have Mothra versus Godzilla.
I have Gigan.
Okay. My number 12 is Gigan.
Mine is Destroy All Monsters.
That's my number 11.
I have Megalon.
Okay. So number 11's your spot for Megalon?
Yep.
See, that's interesting. So my number 10 is Godzilla versus Megalon.
I see.
For me, like, Raids Again, I think is just a sloppy film in general. GXK is just noise. Mothra versus is boring. Gigan is boring. Destroy Monsters is boring. And then Megalon's where you get to the entertaining stuff. I'm entertained by Megalon, so that's why it goes in front of all of those. But because of it's lacking in other departments, it ends up falling behind everything else.
Yeah. At number 10, I've got All Monsters Attack.
My number 9, I have Ibra, Horror of the Deep.
Likewise. 8 for me is Mothra versus.
Mine is Son of Godzilla.
That's 7 for me.
My 7's All Monsters Attack.
And I follow up number 7 with King Kong vs. Godzilla, number 6.
That's your number 6, King Kong versus? See, my 6 is Godzilla versus Hedorah.
5 Astro Monster for me.
5 for me is King Kong versus Godzilla.
4 Hedorah.
4 is Invasion of Astro Monster.
Ghidorah at 3.
54 at 3.
That's my number 2.
My number 2's -1.
Hey, that's my number 1.
And my number 1's Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster.
No way.
I'm really, as we continue going on here, I think it's very I think we have the same general opinion, but it's obvious what we're valuing more in our true where these things end up.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference between you and I think that's very interesting. And I love that, and I'm excited to see where the next. I mean, we have two episodes or two movies left in the show era.
Yeah.
I'm curious where those two will end up.
I actually am very curious about where the next one will end up for me. I'm very curious.
It's going to be interesting, and I'm curious. I
can safely guess where the last one will end up for you. I can pretty safely guess that one, and I have a rough guess on where I'd be putting it.
I know where the last one is going.
Yeah, I think I know too.
That one's not going to be a surprise unless you don't know me.
Yeah.
But I'm curious where Mechagodzilla 74 will go. I'm very curious.
But yeah, I think that's basically it.
That is. We do have one piece of listener feedback, and then if you're ready, we can transition out of here. So we did recently get a YouTube comment on Rex, your video on the Monarch Legacy of Monsters Episode 1 review.
Oh, that.
It's from user Hamid Gaming, and it's still waiting on the full review / reaction to the whole show. So, Rex, when are we going to cover Monarch?
That's a great question.
I don't think we have an idea for that.
I don't know, but I'm down to do it eventually. I'd love to actually get into the nitty-gritty of what works and what doesn't work in the show, because I have a lot of thoughts on it, but a lot of them aren't fully formed. Where it's like, I know I have an issue with this. I don't entirely know how to put some of my issues into words fully. So I'd actually love to go deeper on the subject.
Well, I guess I'll say this. We do have a TV series planned.
Yes.
Now, that's not saying when, that's not saying where, that's not saying what. But there is a TV series planned, and we will cover it when we get there.
Yes. Pretty exciting one, I'd say, personally. No bias.
So I think that's really all we can say for now. Rex, do you know what that means?
I think it's about time to start throwing out some links here, I think.
Well, I have one thing I want to tell you.
Oh, and what is that?
Hello. My name is Elijah Thomas. And I have a kaiju and tokusatsu problem. Joking aside, I am Elijah. I am a writer. I've written for GodzillaMovies.com, in Kaiju Ramen Magazine, Kaiju United, of which I'm the CIO for, and my writing has also been featured in the book Giant Bug Cinema, a Monster Kid's Guide from Bear Manor Media, where I wrote about Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. I've also been given the privilege to work with my good friends at Giant Monster BS, Grattan Conwell and Matthew Fields, to be the creative consultant on Season 2 of their show, where they're covering independent kaiju films. Outside of writing and podcasting, I also served as a consultant on the upcoming Titanic Creations officially licensed Younguri articulated figure. Go to titanicreations.com/Younguri to order yours today. I think pre-orders are just about out, if not, so definitely take a look into that. I'm also a filmmaker and YouTuber. You can check out my stuff on my YouTube channel, ET13 Productions, where you can see some of my short films and older YouTube videos, along with a playlist that features all of my appearances on YouTube. I actually very recently uploaded one of my early student short horror films called Bio Project. It's a found footage horror film I shot in high school. So that's now available, along with one called The Invisible Teacher, another high school project, along with a couple others I've done. So definitely check that out. You can also check out my action figure photography on my Instagram at ET13_productions and my ex, the artist formerly known as Twitter, thanks Danny, at the same handle. Now, Rex, where can people find you at?
Well, dear listeners, you can find me on YouTube at Rexino, on Twitter at Rex_Xenomorph, and on Instagram, Rex_Xeno. And if you want to check out some of my writing, go take a look at the Tokusatsu Network.
And as for the podcast, don't forget to rate us on iTunes. That boosts our ratings and helps us get recommended to more people just like you. If you don't have an Apple device, which I don't blame you, that's a lie. I'm reading this off a MacBook. You can rate us on Spotify now. Somebody did leave us a review, but it was a 4-star. We need 5 stars. 5 stars. 5 stars. 5-star ratings. To stay up to date with all things Kaiju Conversation related, head over to www.kaijuconversation.com to find all of our episodes, social media, news, and updates. Follow us on Twitter at KAIJU_CONVERS. If you don't have Twitter, you can follow us on Instagram or like us on Facebook. If you're like me before podcasting and you don't have any social media, lucky you. You can email us at kaijuconversation@gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word, you know the drill. And as always, we'll read your reviews on air for everyone to hear. We also have a Teespring store. Eventually we'll have original artwork on there, but until then, you can sport our awesome logo on a t-shirt or maybe even a coffee mug. If you'd like to chat with us, check out our Discord server full of others that have similar interests to you. Most recently, in our General 1 chat, it looks like there was a discussion talking about Obayashi's A Space Godzilla. That is a scrapped Godzilla movie from the late 1970s from the director of House, which would have been an amazing film. I really wish that would have existed.
It would have been so crazy. We're living in the wrong timeline.
We really are. But I do say our Discord server is a great community full of great people. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you can be notified anytime we upload a video. We sometimes post exclusive to the channel, like bloopers for episodes or minisodes talking about news or other subjects. We also have an interview with Mechagodzilla designer Jared Krzyzewski on the channel, and I definitely butchered his name. I'm so sorry about that. And a huge thanks to Rex for editing all of these episodes and all the other content we upload. His links can be found in the description below. Along with Rex, we'd like to give a huge thanks and shout out to Danny DiManna of the Godzilla Novelization Project for his amazing vocals on our theme song. You can support him by following him on Twitter at Danzilla93_GNP or visit his website, GodzillaNovelizationProject.com. And a huge thanks to Grattan Conwell from the podcast Giant Monster BS for composing the music for our theme song. You can support him by following him on Twitter at Giant Monster BS or on any podcast platform under the name Giant Monster BS. And with that, we're going to wrap things up here. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to yet another Godzilla episode. Godzilla movie number 13 is under the belt. We are wrapping up the Showa era very soon. It's very exciting and very scary at the same time. Godzilla vs. Megalon, the first film in the 70s to not have a script in full. And it turned out to be better than the one that came out prior.
Somehow.
What a world. So, just one more thing before we go. Thank you guys so much. I can't wait for us to cover more Godzilla stuff. It's going to be a good time, and I can't wait. So, thank you, and as always, please remember, life's too short to not talk big. Bye, guys.
Bye.
We are set, we are in debt, there's nothing to sweat. Life's too short now, baby. And not too big now, baby. Conversation. His name's Elijah, baby. And also Rex now, baby. We love those kaiju, baby. And you will too now.